Whether it was letting her into my house, allowing her to stay, or discovering the self-defense blade hidden beneath her pillow, I didn't care about any of it. This boundless tolerance and trust of mine made Bai Wei feel a heavy lump catch right in her throat. She had 1,000 words of gratitude she wanted to say to me, yet not a single syllable could escape her lips. Echoing in Bai Wei's ears were the words her grandmother once told her. In this lifetime, you only need to cross paths with the right person. When she was little, she never understood why her parents constantly fought, and her grandmother had answered her like this. Now, she finally understood, even though this kind of happiness is something many people struggle to attain in a lifetime. Deep down in her heart, she felt endlessly blessed. For having met me, she took a few deep breaths to steady herself and slowly walked over to the bed, taking the dagger that had once given her such a sense of security and quietly tucking it away inside the drawer. From now on, she wouldn't need that cold, lifeless weapon anymore. Returning to the living room, I was pulling 2 cartons of yogurt out of the fridge. I smiled as I peeled back the lid of one and brought the yogurt-coated foil lid right up to her lips. Having a bit of yogurt after a meal is good for your health. Go ahead and lick it clean. Don't waste it, Bai Wei. Stunned, she stared at the lid right in front of her face, as I smiled at her warmly under the soft, golden lamplight, gently shaking the foil lid in my hand. The tips of her ears burned fiery red, and she obediently parted her lips, leaning in closer toward the piece of foil. The exact moment the tip of her tongue curled around the yogurt, a sweet and tangy flavor spread across her taste buds. Watching her cute, kitten-like appearance, I was momentarily dazed for a second. I was worried you wouldn't be used to the plain, unsweetened flavor, so I opened the sweetened one for you. How is it? It's delicious. I popped open my own carton and took a swig, noticing a streak of yogurt smeared right at the corner of my mouth. She instinctively reached for a tissue and gently wiped it away from me. The moment she finished, she suddenly realized how intimately close the two of them had just acted. Flustered, she quickly stepped back and shyly retreated back onto the sofa, holding the yogurt carton in both hands as she slowly took small sips, though she looked like she was quietly enjoying her yogurt. I knew her complete and utter attention was entirely focused on me. I gazed at her with playful amusement, my eyes sweeping slowly up from her thick woolen socks and causing her to self-consciously reveal her delicate ankles, as she instinctively rubbed her feet together, seeing right through her nervous agitation. I chuckled with growing amusement and sat down right beside her. Hey, Nanny-san, can I borrow your shoulder to take a quick afternoon nap? Just lying around right after a meal isn't very comfortable, so having someone to lean on sounds amazing. Bai Wei blushed and nodded. The exact second I gently leaned in, a stray lock of hair brushed across her collarbone, making her entire body instantly freeze up solid, as if her blood had stopped flowing altogether. My warm breath drifted across her neck, forcing her to hold her breath completely and desperately try to sync her breathing with mine. These 5 minutes felt to her both agonizingly brief and excruciatingly long. A gentle breeze outside the window ruffled her hair, and a few stray strands fluttered across my forehead, making me furrow my brow slightly. Playfully, she reached out with her fingertips to pinch the loose strand, lightly brushing it away from my forehead, only for me to shift in my sleep, burying my forehead straight into her cheek, with half my head resting right against her chest, suddenly catching a unique, delicate fragrance. I snapped my eyes wide open, realizing the wildly compromising position we were currently in. I hastily bolted upright. I seriously ended up falling fast asleep like that. Saw the... I didn't mean to take advantage of you. You always claim I'm the one who's sleep-deprived, but I'd say you're just as bad. Seeing as you were able to lean against me and fall asleep that fast, you might as well close your eyes and rest a bit longer. Feeling the palm of her hand gently cupping my cheek and softly patting me, I smiled without saying another word, and peacefully closed my eyes once more. Back in my past life, as a criminal detective, I always had to maintain constant vigilance, meaning my sleep was always agonizingly shallow. This was the absolute first time in my life, while beside someone else, that I could fall asleep so quickly and feel so completely at ease. Gradually, lulled by the gentle breeze. She leaned against my head and drifted off into a deep, peaceful slumber. I don't know when exactly I had shifted my weight, but my head was now resting comfortably on her soft thighs, with my body slightly curled to the side, just like someone hugging a body pillow, with both hands wrapped securely around her slender, supple waist. When Bai Wei slowly woke up and took in this scene, her adorable little face instantly flushed bright red. Yet, she didn't put up a single fight or protest. Instead, she gently rested her hands softly against my back, looking at me like an obedient little puppy trapped in my embrace. She felt completely intoxicated by the warmth. Suddenly, a shrill alarm clock blared to life, jolting me awake from my deep slumber. The moment I snapped back to reality, I realized I was clutching onto something incredibly soft, with my head resting right across her thighs. Startled out of my wits, I violently leaped off the sofa. Watch it. Be a little more careful. Since when did my sleeping posture get this ridiculously bad? I scratched my head, looking completely dumbfounded and bewildered. I hastily bolted into the bathroom to wash my face, and when I stepped back out, I found her smiling warmly at me, showing zero signs of minding my earlier sudden forwardness. Only then did I finally let out a massive sigh of relief. Truth be told, I was terrified that my overly intimate actions might upset her or make her feel wronged. But now that I've confirmed her level of affection toward me is high enough, I've just made up my mind. Let's go. We're heading over to your place to grab your luggage. As dusk began to settle, the setting sun in the west draped over Bai Wei's old apartment building, painting it in a striking shade of fiery orange-red. The closer we got to her home, the more I could feel the Bai Wei walking beside me, growing stiffer and more rigid with every step. Her frantic heartbeat seemed to echo loudly through the dead-silent hallway. A few neighbors passing by shot curious glances back and forth across our faces. "Oh, little Wei, your boyfriend is quite a handsome young man, isn't he?" That notoriously nosy woman living downstairs let out a teasing remark downstairs, making Bai Wei's face flare crimson. She didn't offer a single rebuttal, just bowing her head even lower, paying zero attention to the idle gossip floating around us. I gripped her hand firmly and led her straight up to the 4th floor. By this point, Bai Wei didn't even realize that the entire way here, she hadn't led the path once. Yet I had stopped dead right in front of her apartment door. Arriving right outside Unit 402, Bai Wei fumbled to pull out her keys, her hands shaking so violently she couldn't even guide the key into the keyhole. I could practically hear the click of the lock waiting to open. Just how heavy and agonizingly difficult that simple click truly was for her. Her mind at that moment was an absolute blank void, utterly clueless as to what was waiting for her behind that door. Seeing her standing there frozen stiff, too terrified to push the door open, I directly reached out my hand and twisted the knob open for her, along with the door swinging wide open. The dead silence inside the house made Bai Wei let out a soft sigh of relief, not having to face her mother head-on right away. Allowed her tense, rattled nerves to relax just a fraction, just when we assumed there was nobody home. A bedroom door suddenly swung open, and a little boy around 7 years old stepped out. It was her stepbrother from a different father, Li Mingwu. "Sis, where you been these past few days?" "I want to stay at a friend's place." "Xiao Wu, where are mom and dad?" Even though her parents treated her poorly, she always cherished this younger brother as true family. It's just that every single time she laid eyes on him, it brought back painful memories of her parents' blatant favoritism, spoiling and doting on her brother while completely abandoning her, leaving her emotions in a perpetual state of exhausting turmoil. "Mom and Dad are at the hospital. Mom should be coming back soon to make dinner. Is this handsome bro my sister's boyfriend?" Hearing her younger brother blurt that out, Bai Wei's cheeks flushed crimson as she instinctively shot a glance at me. Seeing that I didn't react or correct him, she didn't bother to explain either. However, upon hearing that her mother was about to return, she instantly panicked, resolving to quickly pack up her belongings and get out. As for me, the moment I heard those two words, hospital, the bloody, horrifying truth hidden beneath that stormy night flashed vividly back into both my and Bai Wei's memories. Last Friday night, Li Fengji had forced her way through Bai Wei's phone, discovering tucked away in Her photo album, a collection of secret photos Bai Wei had taken of me. Li Fengji's psychological state, already hanging by a thread due to the affair of her ex-husband, Bai Cheng Feng, was profoundly fragile. Those secret photos struck right against the most sensitive nerve in her twisted mind. In that very split second, Li Fengji channeled every ounce of her hatred for her ex-husband straight onto Bai Wei, unleashing the most venomous, cruel words imaginable to humiliate her. "You shameless little bitch." Amidst the desperate, tearful gaze of Bai Wei, Li Fengji had completely lost her mind. She snatched up a fruit knife from the table, screaming at the top of her lungs that she would slash her daughter's face to shreds. Hia Stipful Li Gant, seeing this, desperately lunged forward to wrestle the blade away. In the ensuing struggle, the knife shifted direction, and Li Fengji staggered forward, driving the dagger deep into Li Gang's abdomen. The reek of fresh blood was what finally snapped Li Fengji back to her senses, collapsing into a pool of blood as she wailed in absolute agony. Li Gang taking that knife blow for her back then wasn't done out of any desire to protect Bai Wei, but purely to protect the wife he so deeply and obsessively loved from committing an unforgivable capital crime. He had secretly loved Li Fengji ever since they were young, a twisted, subservient, and obsessive kind of love. No matter how unhinged or deranged his wife became, he remained entirely willing to risk his life to shield her, yet never spared a single ounce of affection for his innocent stepdaughter. Facing her husband lying in a pool of blood, Li Fengji suddenly snapped her head back to glare at a terrified Bai Wei. "Get the hell out of here, you jinxing piece of trash. Get lost. Get as far away from me as you possibly can." Just like that, with not a single penny to her name, Bai Wei was cast out into the howling, desolate rainstorm, shaking her head desperately. To cast aside those brutal, traumatic memories, Bai Wei told her younger brother to go back to his room to do his homework. Before pulling me into her bedroom, she hauled out a pink suitcase and frantically began tossing in her clothes. I glanced around the room, my gaze locking onto a locked journal, sitting inside her desk drawer. In my past life, I had opened this very diary after her tragic death. The pages inside were densely packed with cheerful, fabricated stories that she forced herself to write just to scrape together the courage to keep living. In this lifetime, I wouldn't dare touch it, even though Bai Wei hadn't uttered a word about what she wanted to take. Relying entirely on my profound understanding of her, I quietly gathered the books and notebooks she treasured the most and neatly stacked them on the desk. When she finished packing her clothes and turned around, she saw that everything I had picked out was precisely what she had secretly wanted to bring, while everything else was left behind. She stood frozen, her eyes welling up with an indescribable wave of deep emotion. Turns out, while she was silently watching over that boy from afar, that very same boy had been quietly paying attention to her in such a subtle, caring way. After getting everything packed up, Bai Wei pulled out a piece of paper, leaving behind a short, hastily written note. As we dragged our suitcases out of the bedroom, Bai Wei placed the note down on the dining table, just as she turned around, preparing to head toward the main entrance. The click of the front door lock suddenly rattled. The next second, the door was shoved wide open, and Li Fengji's silhouette materialized right in the doorway. The air in the room instantly froze solid, and the hand Bai Wei used to grip her suitcase trembled violently. Li Fengji was equally frozen in place, until Li Mingwu heard the commotion and opened his bedroom door to call out, "Mom, I'm hungry," shattering the tense silence. Suppressing her raging fury, Li Fengji coaxed her son back into his room. The exact split second the bedroom door clicked shut, her expression instantly morphed, glaring coldly at Bai Wei with eyes full of sharp suspicion. "What the hell do you think you're doing now? All grown up with wings on your back, huh? Think I can't control you anymore? Found yourself some man, and now you're planning to run away. For good, is that it?" Bai Wei bit her lower lip without uttering a single syllable. Last Friday night's harsh words, "Get as far away as you possibly can," were still ringing loudly in her ears. Do you have any idea how much agonizing pain I went through, raising you and bringing you into this world? And now you think you can just brush off your backside and leave for good? Did you even bother to ask me first? Do you still even acknowledge this mother in your eyes? Tears welled up in Bai Wei's eyes, not from being yelled at, but from sheer heartache. The very last sliver of hope she held out for any maternal tenderness, shattered completely into pieces in this exact moment. To preserve what little dignity she had left, she refused to start a shouting match or scream at her mother, seeing her looking so deeply wronged. And, quietly shedding tears, I coldly stepped forward, planting myself firmly in front of her to shield her. Annie, the fact that Bai Wei has been pushed to this desperate extreme isn't because of any choice she made, but because you and Uncle drove her into a corner with your own bare hands. I've already looked into your background through your teacher. Don't you dare try to sweet-talk me with your glib tongue. I know exactly what kind of trash people like you, these spoiled, rich heirs, really are. She spun around to glare at Bai Wei with fake anguish. He might be handsome and loaded with cash, but he's cut from the exact same cloth as your father. When they adore you, they'll spoil you rotten. But the moment they grow bored, they'll discard you without a single shred of mercy. Look at your own mother as a living mirror. Can't you see it? Sooner or later, he's going to get sick of you and throw you away too. It's still not too late to wake up and come to your senses. Hearing these venomous, malicious speculations, Bai Wei's eyes brimmed with tears. As she looked at me, she knew I wasn't that kind of person besides. We hadn't even officially defined our relationship yet. I drew in a deep breath and gently used my sleeve to wipe away Bai Wei's falling tears. I've never been one for empty promises about forever and 1,000 years. All I know is that true love means cherishing the present moment. True, nobody can ever guarantee what the future holds, but I know one thing for certain. With Bai Wei by my side, every memory she gathers and holds onto will be nothing but pure happiness. And that's more than enough. I don't give a damn what kind of fancy words you're spinning. I'm giving you a strict warning to stay the hell away from my daughter. And I'm strictly warning you right back, Annie. Bai Wei is a legal adult. She already has a steady job and a stable income. In the eyes of the law, she has every absolute right to break free from your suffocating control. If you actually care about her in the capacity of a mother, you're always welcome, but if you just want to treat her like your personal puppet forever, then I'm sorry, I will absolutely never allow it. Li Fengji, trembling, picked up the piece of paper, and upon seeing the written monthly salary of 6,000 yuan, her pupils violently constricted. She suddenly realized that inside her daughter's frail, delicate body was hidden such an unyielding, fierce will to rebel. Oh, wonderful. Got some money, and now you think you're hot shit? Don't you dare sit here and lecture me about the law. If you dare try to take her away, I swear I'll call the cops right to your doorstep. Even if you call the police, we're still entirely in the right, legally speaking. But have you even stopped to think about the consequences of doing that? Xiao Wu is still just a little kid, and I'm sure you wouldn't want your reckless actions to cause him to become the talk of the school and get ostracized by his peers. Every single word hit like a lethal blow. My words had completely struck right at Li Fengji's absolute weakest spot. She already felt immensely indebted to her current husband, and she could never allow her husband and young son to be dragged down or implicated because of her actions. Fine. Wonderful. Both of you get the hell out of my sight right now. Mark my words. The second this rich little punk gets sick of playing with you, don't you dare come crying back to me and begging for my forgiveness. You think you're stepping into a golden cage, huh? It won't be long before you deeply regret this. I reached down and picked up the largest shrapnel of broken porcelain, pressing its sharp edge into my palm until a bead of crimson blood welled up. You're wrong, Andy. I'm not building a cage for her. I'll pamper her just like a precious canary. But I'm going to teach her how to grow her own wings and soar freely into a world of her very own. My words left Bai Wei, profoundly emotional, tears welling up in her eyes again. With sudden, newfound courage, she reached out and gripped my wrist tightly, following right behind me out the door. A bunch of ungrateful freeloaders. Just go, get the hell out of here. Seeing the frail, haggard, and withered appearance of Bai Wei's mother, tears streamed down Bai Wei's face. Yet she fought hard to swallow the agonizing reluctance in her heart. Mom, I'm leaving. Everything I want to say is written on that note left on the table. She hauled her suitcase and hurried out the door, terrified that if she lingered for even a single second longer, her hard-earned resolve to leave would completely shatter. Reaching the apartment stair landing, the hallway's automatic motion sensor light flickered on with a sharp click. Suddenly, a hoarse, desperate cry echoed from upstairs. Ching ching. That agonizing cry startled a flock of sparrows resting on the window ledge, sending them scattering into flight. Bai Wei's entire body violently shuddered, the wheels of her suitcase jamming hard against the concrete step. I could feel it so clearly, her rigid fingertips trembling like the frozen wings of a butterfly. Accompanied by the sound of hurried footsteps, Li Fengji, rushing down the stairs far too fast, staggered and hurled herself downward. Her forehead even slammed harshly against the wall, drawing a smear of blood. Ching Ching, don't go. It's Mom's fault. Mom was wrong. Mom, promise, I'll never yell at you again. Hearing that name, Ching Ching, Bai Wei instantly lost all control as tears surged forth, and she threw herself into her mother's embrace. Witnessing this scene, I was utterly stunned, suddenly realizing that the Li Fengji before my eyes was like a completely different person. Her entire demeanor, tone of voice, and frantic actions had entirely changed. It was only much later that I found out Li Fengji, having suffered such a violent psychological shock, had developed a severe case of dissociative identity disorder. It was only during those extremely rare moments when Bai Wei revealed her ultimate vulnerability that this third, deeply affectionate personality would finally emerge. And that precious name, Ching Ching, that she cried out, was the absolute telltale sign of this loving mother returning. I'm sorry, Mom, but I still have to go. Those days spent living without your warmth are something I truly cannot endure a moment longer. Bai Wei knew full well that her mother would quickly revert back to that volatile, irritable monster, which only fueled her unshakable resolve to leave. Her dream of studying psychology was born from the burning hope that she could one day heal her mother, allowing the mother who truly loved her to stay by her side forever. Auntie, if you truly cherish and love Bai Wei, please rest assured and entrust her completely to me. I swear on my life, I won't let her suffer even the slightest hint of hardship. I'm such a useless mother. This child has never been used to, voicing the grievances bottled up inside her. So please, I'm begging you to keep a close eye on her and take good care of her. Li Fengji lowered her head, taking both my hand and Bai Wei's hands, and pressed them firmly together. Her palms were freezing cold, yet the touch sent a burning heat straight through our skin. She reached out one last time to stroke the little sunshine doll charm, hanging off Bai Wei's suitcase, waving goodbye to us with a gaze full of profound tenderness. Bai Wei looked back every 3 steps as she walked away, though her tears had already been replaced by a bright, liberated smile. Bai Wei had completely shed her heavy armor, bursting with vibrant energy like a newly reborn bird. With one hand she hauled her luggage, while the other gripped tightly onto my arm, leaning her whole body against me in pure delight. The soft, comforting warmth radiating from her arm washed over me, and caught up in her infectious joy, I couldn't help but smile along with her. Inside the taxi, speeding back home, even the driver noticed her dramatic transformation, teasing that she must have just hit the lottery jackpot. Yet, deep down inside, a faint ripple of unease stirred within me. Right before getting into the car, I distinctly felt as though someone was lurking in the shadows, secretly watching us. What are you looking at so intently? It's nothing. I shook my head with a smile, brushing it off. Was it really just some paranoid illusion of mine? I glanced out the car window, one final time, forcing those nagging suspicions out of my mind. The evening self-study bell echoed across the campus, and the classroom was instantly filled with the scent of paper and the oppressive rustle of turning pages. Bai Wei sat right beside me on the right, focused intently on correcting her error logs from earlier this afternoon. Ever since escaping that suffocating, toxic household, her entire being was like a withered tree finally drinking in the warm sunshine, with even her hair radiating a sense of effortless grace. Yet I couldn't shake off the lingering unease. Ever since stepping out of the taxi, that chilling sensation of being stalked by a venomous snake had relentlessly dogged my every step. The razor-sharp intuition of a veteran criminal investigator whispered directly to my instincts. That creep following us had actually tracked us all the way inside the school. I feigned casual indifference as I spun a ballpoint pen between my fingers, while my peripheral vision remained locked, dead onto the reflection shimmering across the glass door. The hallway's automatic motion sensor light outside the classroom hadn't turned off yet, which meant someone was lurking right around the blind spot of the camera, quietly spying in our direction. Nanchung, for this physics problem on force analysis. I feel like I'm missing a friction component. Could you take a look at it for me? As she leaned in close, carrying a faint, refreshing scent of citrus, I accepted the scratch paper from her hand. Though out of the corner of my eye in that exact split second, I caught a fleeting reflection across the front glass door, a shadowy figure clad in a heavy black raincoat. The ominous figure instantly ducked back behind the concrete pillar. You completely overlooked static friction for this part. But don't stress over this problem right now. Yoei, listen closely to me for the next 5 minutes. No matter what happens outside, just stay glued to your seat. And absolutely do not step foot outside this classroom. What's going on? Where are you planning to go? Don't be afraid. I'm just going to hunt down a lingering ghost that's been tailing us. Remember, staying inside this crowded classroom is the safest place for you right now. Wait for me to get back without giving by way. Any chance to question me further, I abruptly pushed my chair back and strode quickly out of the classroom through the back door. The exact moment I stepped out into the hallway, the gentle warmth on my face vanished completely, replaced instantly by the piercing, frigid composure of a past-life homicide detective, the kind of icy glare that used to strike pure terror into the hearts of ruthless serial predators. I intentionally stomped my feet heavily against the floor, marching straight toward the abandoned, highly isolated science lab block at the far end of the hallway where the lights flickered dimly, and the security cameras had long since broken down. If our stalker wanted to make a move, that place was nothing short of the ultimate hunting ground. Naturally, just as I stepped into the frigid, echoing hallway, leading toward the laboratory block, the faint sound of carefully muffled footsteps echoed from behind me. The friction of rubber shoe soles against the polished stone floor was amplified infinitely within the empty, desolate corridor. A cold smirk tugged at my lips. The prey had finally taken the bait. I abruptly shoved open the door to the old chemistry lab, sliding my body sideways into the absolute blind spot behind the door. Holding my breath, exactly 10 seconds later, the door was slowly pushed open by a rough, calloused hand. A weak, wavering beam from a flashlight sliced through the darkness. And right at that moment, I lunged out from behind the door like a hunting leopard, my left hand striking with pinpoint precision to clamp down hard around the intruder's flashlight-wielding wrist, applying sudden leverage with my fingers to violently wrench it outward, accompanied by a sharp, agonizing groan. The flashlight clattered heavily onto the floor. Without a fraction of a second's hesitation, my right hand lunged forward to grip the back of his neck, and leveraging his forward momentum, I drove a merciless knee straight up into his stomach. This brutal close-quarters combat technique left zero room for hesitation. It was a textbook display of absolute, overwhelming dominance. The stalker instantly lost all ability to fight back, curling up in sheer agony as he collapsed hard onto the floor. I planted one foot firmly against his chest, pinning him down mercilessly onto the cold tiles. Then, crouching down, I scooped up the flashlight and shoved the beam right into his face. When I clearly made out those features twisted in pain, my pupils violently constricted. Li Gang. The man pinned beneath me on the floor was none other than Bai Wei's stepfather, the exact same man who, during the stormy night of last Friday, took a deep knife wound straight to the gut, in order to shield his wildly unhinged wife. The deep abdominal wound on his body clearly hadn't healed yet, and the agonizing pain had him dripping in cold sweat. Yet he still fixed a pair of bloodshot, glaring eyes directly at me, while right beside him, inside the pocket of his raincoat, a sharp, gleaming dagger had tumbled out onto the floor. Auntie is still recovering at the hospital. So why aren't you resting properly in your hospital bed, dragging an unhealed injury all the way to the school dressed like this, stalking my every move? Just what the hell are you planning to do? Why the hell are you protecting her so fiercely this afternoon after you guys left? Feng Ji completely broke down at the hospital, bashing her head repeatedly against the metal bed rails. If the doctors hadn't intervened in the nick of time and injected her with heavy sedatives, she wouldn't have survived that breakdown at all. As long as Bai Wei remains in this city for even a single day, Feng Ji will never recover or get better. She has to completely disappear from this city. I need her gone, once and for all. Looking at Li Gang's crazed, frenzied expression, those lingering doubts and fragments of my past life suddenly snapped together with terrifying clarity in this exact moment. That stormy night in my past life, the figure in the raincoat, who flawlessly evaded every single security camera and struck down Bai Wei mercilessly in that dead-end alley. Could it be that it wasn't some random criminal or thug, after all, but rather this very stepfather, who had completely lost his mind over his wife? Could it be that on that night, just like today, he disregarded his severe wounds, sneaked out of the hospital, trailed relentlessly behind Bai Wei, and carried out that vicious attack? I made my decision instantly. No more wasting words. I pulled out my phone and immediately called the police. For the crimes of carrying a deadly weapon while stalking someone and harboring intent to assault, I had Li Gang hauled away in a police cruiser. Yet as I watched the police car drive off with its siren wailing, my chest felt as tight as a frayed guitar string, completely unable to relax. The next morning, I took a half-day leave from school, and leveraging my father's connections in the city, under the pretext of checking up on a family member's medical condition, I managed to gain access to the city hospital's surveillance room, without concrete, irrefutable evidence, proving that he was the actual culprit. I didn't dare jump to any premature conclusions. After all, during my past life investigation, we had initially ruled out any possible motive from him, especially since he possessed an airtight, rock-solid alibi. I had to see it with my own eyes and confirm what Li Gang was actually doing on the stormy night of last Friday. Mister, would you mind pulling up the surveillance footage for the emergency operating room hallway from 8 to 10 p.m. last Friday? The monitor flickered as the scene shifted. At 8:15 p.m., Li Gang, covered entirely in blood, was wheeled into the operating room. At 8:40 p.m., the surgical room lights were still blazing, with nurses rushing in and out carrying blood bags. At 9:20 p.m., Li Gang was wheeled out of the operating room, with tubes hooked all over his body, and wheeled directly into the intensive care unit. Right up until 11 p.m., not a single soul entered or exited the ICU. A man who was severely injured like that could never have possibly leaped down for the third-floor hospital balcony. My mind felt struck by a sudden bolt of lightning, and my hands and feet turned instantly ice-cold. The forensic pathologist's estimated time of death for Bai Wei in my past life was right around 10:30 p.m. that very night. An ironclad, bulletproof alibi. On that stormy night in my past life, Li Gang was lying helpless on the operating table, making it physically impossible for him to split his body in two and chase down Bai Wei into that narrow alleyway. If the killer wasn't her stepfather Li Gang, then who the hell was it? Stepping out through the hospital gates, the harsh glare of the midday sun made me squint slightly. Li Gang's Shamingli Flaulas Alivi weighed down on my chest like a massive boulder. Who on earth was the true culprit? Behind that stormy night in my past life, the sheer terror of knowing our enemy was lurking in the pitch-black shadows while we stood exposed in the light, was far more unsettling than facing a bloodthirsty demon head-on. Pushing open the front door to the house, the interior was dead silent, with the air carrying a faint, soothing hint of shower gel. I tiptoed quietly into the guest bedroom. Bai Wei was curled up inside the blankets, taking a nap. She wasn't sleeping peacefully. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly as her fingers instinctively clutched the edge of the blanket. Looking at her sleeping, fragile form, over half of the fury inside my chest melted away. I stepped forward, intending to pull the thin blanket that had slipped down back over her. But right as I lifted my head, my gaze swept across the living room window, and my movements froze completely in place. The slanted afternoon sunlight cut sharply across the glass pane, revealing a faint, dusty fingerprint clearly smudged. On the exterior side of the window, every single hair on my body instantly stood on end, holding my breath. I whipped around, unlocked the door, and bolted outside onto the lawn. Sure enough, right along the edge of the grass beneath the living room window, several potted plants had been trampled and knocked sideways, leaving a chaotic trail of footprints pressed into the soft dirt. The direction of those footprints pointed directly at the window where Bai Wei was sleeping. My heart hammered violently against my ribs. Someone had just been standing right here, even placing their hands directly against the glass. Through this thin pane of glass, that stalker had been staring greedily at the sleeping girl inside. A suffocating wave of danger crashed over me like a rising tide. To think they actually followed us all the way to my doorstep. Even though this apartment complex had security, it was impossible to guard against a malicious predator deliberately lurking in the shadows. I refused to sit back and wait to be hunted. That very afternoon, I marched straight to the electronics store and bought 3 massive boxes of high-end equipment, HD infrared, night vision security cameras, and vibration sensor alarms for the windowsills. I hauled an A-frame ladder around myself, pacing back and forth around the house and living room while drilling into the walls. Just as Bai Wei was jolted awake by the noise, she stepped out of her room wearing oversized pajamas, rubbing her sleepy eyes. What on earth are you doing? Why did you buy so many cameras? All of a sudden, I guess I'm just a bit paranoid. Even though living on the ground floor is convenient, installing a few extra security measures is always better safe than sorry. Come over here and hold the ladder steady for me. Are you doing this because you're worried I won't be safe home alone? You know the answer, so why ask? While mounting the camera in the top corner of the living room ceiling, I needed a higher vantage point. Bai Wei stood on her tiptoes, stretching out to hand the wiring up to me. Because of her sudden, forceful movement, her exquisite collarbone and a patch of smooth, fair skin were exposed. Looking down from above, my gaze accidentally swept right over them, and my throat instantly went bone dry. All right, hold it steady. I'm coming down right now. As I stepped off the ladder, I happened to glance down once more. Bai Wei caught my gaze, her face flushing crimson red in an instant. She let out a startled gasp and let go of the ladder. Losing my balance, I tumbled backward, and Bai Wei instinctively threw her arms out to catch me, swaying together, as half of my body weight collapsed right against hers, pulling her straight into my embrace. Are you okay? Did you twist your ankle or anything? My ankle's fine, but I got quite a shock just now, so my legs feel a bit jelly-like. Your bodyguard service failed, so you definitely owe me compensation. Who told you to pull dirty tricks? Though she protested with her words, her slender arms hesitated for a brief second, before gently wrapping around my waist, holding onto the warmth and sweet fragrance embraced in my arms. The tense nerves and anxieties that plagued me all day were temporarily calmed. After dinner, I sat down on the sofa, adjusting the split-screen display of the monitoring system on my laptop. Bai Wei washed a plate of fresh strawberries, obediently sitting right beside me as she used a toothpick to spear the largest one and bring it to my lips. I turned my gaze toward the monitor screen. The lawn outside the window, all surrounding blind spots, and every possible point of entry were completely covered by high definition security cameras with 0 blind spots. The moment that shadowy creep dares to show his face again, I'll make damn sure he has nowhere to run. Bai Wei, from now on, when you're home alone, unless I unlock the door with my key, don't answer anyone who knocks, no matter who it is. Remember, absolutely anyone. I know I got it. The afternoon sunlight radiated a faint heat off the asphalt pavement. Bai Wei walked beside me, carrying her school bag, her ponytail swaying rhythmically with every step she took. Ever since moving into my apartment and escaping that suffocating household, her footsteps felt so much lighter, and every now and then, she would lean in close to share her corrections on today's math mistakes. Yet I couldn't shake off my unease even for a second. That nagging sensation of being stalked like a persistent needle prick, ever since we stepped out of the apartment gates, had latched fiercely onto the back of my neck. Step a little closer to the inside. There's too much traffic out here. Nanqing, what's wrong with you? Your palms are completely drenched in sweat. It's nothing. I was tinkering with those security cameras all afternoon and didn't get much rest. Let's hurry up. First period this afternoon is our head teacher's class, and arriving late means getting chewed out. I put on a casual front, while my peripheral vision rapidly scanned the storefronts. and the grassy roadside patches where shadows hid. Yet that creepy sensation of being stalked by a venomous snake was unmistakably real. Just as we entered the school gates, Jiang Yan's trademark, loud, boisterous voice rang out from a shaded courtyard of the academic building. He sprinted right up to me, his face flushed bright red, too excited to form a proper sentence. Nansheng, oh my God. Man, you're literally an absolute psychic genius. That tip about the wanted criminal Li that you handed over turned out to be 100 real. The entire police station is currently in total uproar, saying that guy was actually a fugitive who'd slipped across 3 provinces, with multiple human lives on his hands. Did they catch him? Mentioning this, Jiang Yan's excited face instantly sunk by half. That place is seriously haunted or something. The police officers sealed off the entire old district, encircling it 3 layers deep without leaving a single gap. We couldn't even get close to the scene. Yet in the end, that bastard practically evaporated into thin air. Word is his counter-surveillance skills are insanely high. Just minutes before the police cordon tightened around him, he plunged straight down into a stinking sewer pipe and slipped away underground. My heart skipped a violent beat. Jiang Yan's words felt like a surgical blade, coldly slicing away every last sliver of my wishful thinking. The serial killer from my past life. Even though he wasn't directly tied to Bai Wei's tragic end, he was still a cold-blooded, merciless lunatic of supreme cunning. The fact that he managed to slip right through a police blockade proved he was currently lurking in the darkest corners of this city, just like a cornered, feral beast ready to snap. I recalled earlier this afternoon, outside the living room window, those faint, dusty fingerprints, and the chaotic trail of footprints trampled across the lawn. If the true killer from that stormy night in my past life has yet to surface, then could the bastard who climbed up to my living room window today actually be that desperate fugitive, pushed to the absolute edge? Was he just fleeing police pursuit and randomly choosing my place, a house that looked relatively well off, to hide out in? Or was he deliberately hunting down the whistleblower and secretly scoping out our location for revenge? Jiang Yan, listen to me very carefully. For the foreseeable future, aside from school and home, do not go anywhere else. What's with the heavy tone, bro? I'm about to get my reward money and treat you to a feast, but looking at your face, that wanted criminal isn't just some ordinary thug. He's an unhinged madman with 0 moral boundaries. You handed over the tip that got him exposed. So once he tracks down the news and realizes you were the informant, the very first people he'll come after for bloody revenge will be you and your family. The absolute first person he'll exact vengeance upon is you and your aunt. No way, you're exaggerating. I'm still A. The number of bodies that guy has left in his wake is far greater than all the blood you've ever seen in your life. Stop talking back and listen to me. When school ends, head straight to the hospital. Lock your aunt's hospital room door tight from the inside. And no matter who calls out, do not step outside, understand? Got it, bro. Stop trying to scare me. My own precious life is fine, but my mom can't handle any sudden shocks. Watching Jiang Yin scurry off, I stood frozen in the shaded school corridor, a freezing chill crawling down my spine. Li Gang's involvement had been ruled out, meaning the true killer from that stormy night was still lurking in the dark. And now, a ruthless serial predator was also on the loose. 2 unknown, deadly threats intertwined together to close a net around us. I reached into my pocket and touched my phone, where the home surveillance application was quietly running in the background. Whoever left those footprints outside the window, if you dare show your face again, I'll make you pay in blood. After evening self-study, Bai Wei and I walked side by side on way back home. Although the night wind carried a slight chill, she seemed to deeply enjoy the sense of security of having someone walk her home. All along the way, she chattered happily, telling me all sorts of funny stories from class. Upon returning home, Bai Wei eagerly put on an apron and headed into the kitchen. Before long, 2 steaming bowls of tomato and egg noodles, along with a few small side dishes, were served on the table. Nansheng, hurry up and taste it. Today I added an extra fried egg to yours. And I even made sure to get the edges extra crispy, just the way you like them. As long as it's something you made. Even if it were poison, I'd clean the plate. Stop talking nonsense and eat up already. It's about to get cold. The warm, golden glow of the dining room lights cast a soft radiance over her flushed cheeks, creating a gentle, tranquil atmosphere. I dug into the noodles with a hearty appetite, savoring this fleeting moment of peace. After the meal, Bai Wei headed into the bathroom, and the sound of running water filled the air. Leaning back against the sofa, I unlocked my phone and logged into the courtyard surveillance system that I had just installed. On the screen, accessing the surveillance system of the courtyard that I recently installed right onto the screen. The infrared night vision camera clearly illuminated the grassy yard surrounding the house. Casually reviewing the afternoon's recorded video feed, my gaze suddenly locked onto a frame from past 6 p.m., back before we had even returned home. A strange man wearing a baseball cap had been loitering right on the lawn outside our yard for over 10 minutes, even peeking directly through the window several times. I immediately zoomed in on the footage, carefully analyzing his facial features. This guy had a slightly stocky build and downturned eyes. In my mind, I rapidly flipped through the wanted poster of the criminal recently released by the police. Wait, wasn't that wanted fugitive supposed to have a thin build and high cheekbones? If this wasn't the escaping criminal, then where the hell did this rat crawl out from? Could this be the actual killer from my past life scouting us out? This suffocating sensation of an unseen enemy lurking in the dark made my skin crawl. The fugitive serial killer on the loose. The mystery killer from the stormy night in my past life. And now this strange creep loitering around in broad daylight. I felt as though I was standing right at the dead center of a massive, pitch-black vortex. The clock struck 1 a.m., and the entire apartment complex plunged into a pin-drop silence. I lay on the bed in the master bedroom, even though my eyes were tightly shut. My nerves remained in a state of hypervigilance, just as tense as when I was a homicide detective in my past life. Suddenly, a faint click, a very subtle sound rang out from outside, immediately followed by the soft, deliberately muffled crunch of footsteps, slowly creeping closer toward the living room window. My eyes snapped wide open instantly, like a predator abruptly jolted awake. Silently slipping out of bed, I stepped across the wooden floorboards without making a single sound, pressing my back flat against the wall. As I inched step by step toward the blind spot, right beside the living room window, through the faint moonlight filtering past the curtain gap, I vaguely caught sight of a lean, shadowy figure sneaking up against the exterior wall. The figure's hands seemed to be fumbling around the windowsill, even attempting to gently shove the window open. Every muscle in my body tensed to its absolute limit. The moment he made a single suspicious move, I would burst out instantly and take him down. Yet I forced myself to hold back and avoid alerting him. I wanted to see what on earth this guy was planning to do and whether he had any accomplices with him. Time ticked away second by second, and the shadowy figure stood outside the window for about 2 to 3 minutes, seeming to realize that the window was securely locked from the inside, and perhaps sensing an impending danger. He abruptly stopped in his tracks, pivoted around, and rapidly vanished into the apartment complex's grassy yard. Instinctively, I wanted to fling the door open and chase after him. But the moment my hand brushed against the doorknob, my movements froze dead in their tracks. I turned my head to look at the tightly closed door of the guest bedroom. Bai Wei was still fast asleep inside. Compared to hunting down the stray rat, Bai Wei's absolute safety remained my top, uncompromisable priority. Suppressing the urge to strike back immediately, I turned on my heel and walked over to the coffee table, rapidly opening up the surveillance software on my laptop to replay the infrared video feed of that exact spot. The video began rolling backward, bringing the shadowy figure back onto the screen. This high-end security system boasted an ultra-high resolution. Even the fabric wrinkles on the intruder's clothing were captured with crystal-clear precision. I glued my eyes tightly to the display, dragging the progress bar forward to the exact moment the shadow turned around to leave. Just as he pivoted away, the security camera's infrared lens caught a dead-on glimpse of his face. The split second I laid eyes on those features, my pupils contracted violently as my brain roared with static. It felt as though someone had just smashed a heavy club against the back of my head. That face, usually hidden beneath a mop of thick, shaggy hair, radiating a pathetic vibe of timidity and isolation, belonged to Yeezy. Why on earth was it him? That notoriously spineless outcast in our class who constantly got bullied by thugs. Why was he sneaking around like a phantom outside my window in the dead of night? The dim, eerie blue glow of a laptop screen cast a harsh light across my face. I didn't turn on any lights, sitting entirely alone in the pitch-black darkness on the sofa. While my fingers subconsciously tapped against my knee, my brain spun like a high-speed processor, desperately piecing together this chaotic puzzle of seemingly disconnected clues, seemingly completely unrelated to this. That stocky, unidentified weirdo from broad daylight. Yeezy appearing in the dead of night, along with those faint, dusty fingerprints left on the guest bedroom window. What on earth was the hidden link connecting all three of these things? If those fingerprints were left behind by the stocky guy from daytime, why did he only loiter around on the lawn without taking any further action? Who could possibly be pulling his strings? I drew in a deep breath, temporarily shelving the clues regarding the stocky man, as I glued my eyes back to the screen and fixed them on Yeezy's face. Compared to the shady, mysterious background of that stocky guy, Yeezy's sudden appearance sent an even deeper shiver down my spine. A guy at school known for his withdrawn, isolated personality. Someone who would quietly endure getting extorted by thugs without daring to fight back. Why on earth would he, at 1 a.m., display such seasoned, expert stealth skills and appear outside my window like a lingering phantom? Once my detective instincts were fully activated, all those overlooked details from my past life came flooding back. Like a surging tide, I remembered that stormy night in my past life. On that very night, Yeezy just happened to be near the crime scene as well. He had been cornered in a dead-end alley by those thugs and beaten savagely. And by the way, having just stepped out of the convenience store and witnessing that brutal scene, was the one who headed toward that alley to intervene. In my past life, I had always assumed that Yeezy was merely an unlucky victim who happened to show up at the wrong place at the wrong time. But looking at it now, this supposed victim was sneaking up to my window in the middle of the night. Could the true killer from that stormy night in my past life, who snatched Bai Wei's knife and mercilessly slaughtered her, actually have been Yeezy all along? The moment that horrifying thought flashed through my mind, my razor-sharp criminal logic rapidly pieced everything back together. I closed my eyes tight, forcing myself to recall the aftermath of Bai Wei's tragic death. The entire school had been thrown into complete shock. Police officers came to the campus every single day to take statements, and every student was gripped with panic. But what about Yeezy? Yeezy in my past life. During those dark days following Bai Wei's passing, during the grueling days after Bai Wei, he had continued to act like an absolute, invisible ghost sitting in the corner of the classroom, exhibiting zero signs of panic whatsoever, and not showing even a single shred of abnormal emotional turbulence. His unnatural composure was like a stagnant pool of dead water. Wait, no. Knowing criminal psychology inside and out, I knew that when faced with heavy police questioning and ongoing investigations, it was simply impossible to maintain a flawless facade. Beneath that fake, calculated calmness lay a terrifyingly abnormal psychological resilience and an unfathomable depth of malice. How could a teenage boy who shook like a leaf when bullied by thugs possess the mental fortitude rivaling a seasoned psychopath? If he truly harbored such sinister depths, then his frail, easily bullied exterior at school was entirely an act, a complete sham. He was like a venomous snake draped in sheep's wool, silently lurking, right beside everyone, coldly observing our every move. The wall clock ticked away relentlessly in the silence, and a sudden chill ran down my spine. If Yeezy was indeed that cold-blooded monster in my past life, then his appearance here tonight could only mean one thing. In this lifetime, he had already targeted Bai Wei and me as his next helpless prey. Damn it all to hell. No matter what kind of monster hides behind that mask of yours, whether human or demon, I'm going to strip it away. I stood up and walked over to the guest bedroom door, gently making sure the lock was securely clicked into place. Hearing Bai Wei's steady breathing coming from inside, I subconsciously clenched my fists tight. This ticking time bomb was sitting right there in our classroom, and I couldn't afford to ignore it any longer. My mind was made up. The moment I stepped foot on campus tomorrow, I was on a hunt down Yi Zi, tear apart his harmless disguise once and for all, and unearth the brutal truth behind both that stormy night and tonight's break-in. Morning sunlight streamed through the thin balcony curtains, painting a warm streak of gold across the wooden floorboards. I pushed open my bedroom door, and the sizzling sound of bacon echoing from the kitchen, mingled with the rich aroma of toasted bread. Bai Wei, wearing a clean white hoodie, stood on her tiptoes as she bustled around the kitchen counter. The soft morning sunlight traced the delicate outline of her slender figure, radiating a gentle warmth. This breathtaking scene was so surreal. It almost made you forget the bone-chilling terror of last night. You're awake? Go wash up quickly, because the sandwiches are almost done. Today I made sure to add extra cheese just the way you like it. You're so domestic. Whoever ends up marrying you in the future must have spent their past life praying to the gods. Teaming up on me bright and early, huh? Go wash your face already, and once you're done, take a seat at the table. I watched as she took a small bite of her sandwich, a tiny dab of white mayonnaise accidentally smudging the corner of her mouth. Instead of speaking up to remind her, I reached out directly and gently used my finger to wipe away the sauce from her lips. You eat like a messy little kitten. I can take care of myself. This cozy, tender moment felt like the final calm before a devastating storm. I finished off my last gulp of milk, burying the ominous shadow of last night's camera footage deep down in the back of my mind. No matter how many monsters and ghouls lurked inside this house, I was determined to shelter her in absolute light and safety. After breakfast, Bai Wei and I walked shoulder to shoulder along the tree-lined path towards school. It was peak morning rush hour, and the streets were packed with congested traffic, uniformed students, and hurried commuters marching briskly along. Yet, right as we crossed a busy pedestrian intersection, that sickening, all too familiar sensation of a venomous snake's tongue darting out latched fiercely back onto the back of my neck. Every single muscle in my body seized up instantly. The feeling was far too vivid, hidden somewhere amidst the churning crowd of passers-by. A pair of intensely cold, venomous eyes was staring dead ahead, laser-focused on the backs of Bai Wei and me. Bai Wei, your backpack strap looks like it's coming loose. Let me fix that for you. Taking advantage of the moment to adjust her shoulder strap, my eyes swept across the surroundings like a high-speed radar, rapidly scanning the reflection of a street corner newsstand, the shadowy blind spot behind a bus stop, and even the tinted windows of the cars parked along the curb. There were simply too many people, and the field of vision was far too chaotic. I couldn't instantly pinpoint the exact rat hiding in the shadows. I couldn't immediately track down the rat lurking in the shadows, lurking out there in the dark, but I knew for a fact he was close by. Thanks, Nansheng. Wearing it like this feels so much more comfortable. Let's go. Class is about to start, accompanied by that lingering, persistent sensation of being watched. We finally stepped inside the classroom, where students were already reading aloud. I told Bai Wei to head back to her seat first. While I stood right at the back door of the classroom, my gaze sharp as a dagger, as it instantly locked onto the very last row, that secluded spot that always huddled away in the shadows. My heart sank straight down. That seat was completely empty, with not a single textbook in sight on the pristine desktop. What are you staring at, buddy? Oh, you mean Yi Zi? That gloomy kid you're looking for? He didn't come to school today. Word is, he called the homeroom teacher bright and early to ask for sick leave, saying he had a high fever and couldn't even get out of bed. Jiang Yan's casual remark sent a violent tidal wave crashing through my mind. You're saying he called in sick and didn't show up? Yeah. Why are you reacting so intensely, buddy? He gets beaten up all the time anyway. So taking a sick day isn't exactly unusual, is it? I let go of Jiang Yan's shoulder and slowly walked back to my desk, my palms already slick with a layer of cold sweat. At 1 a.m., he materialized like a ghost outside my living room window, executing a recon operation with terrifying professionalism. This very morning, on our way to school, we felt that intensely suffocating sensation of being tracked. And now, he conveniently claimed a high fever to skip class. At this exact moment, all the pieces of the puzzle slammed together in a terrifying collision of logic. If he didn't show up for class, then where on earth was he right now? The answer was practically screaming in my face. The very person who stalked us along our commute this morning and was currently hiding in the dark, watching us like a venomous viper, was 100EZ, the mysterious mastermind and killer of that stormy night from my past life. The monster who snatched Bai Wei's self-defense knife, the creep who sneaked up to my window last night, and the stalker trailing our steps this morning. All my deductions finally converged into a single, pale, cowardly face, hidden beneath a mop of thick hair. Yeezy, just what kind of horrifying secret are you hiding? The final school bell rang out, and I immediately brought Bai Wei straight to Yeezy's address, listed in the class directory. This was an ordinary residential district, fairly old, yet the neighborhood was kept clean and orderly. Reaching the third floor, I knocked on the door, but no one answered. Just as I was wondering, the neighbor, living directly across the hall, walked out carrying a bag of trash. Don't bother knocking. Are you looking for the Yi family? Before dawn even broke this morning, they packed up all their belongings and moved away. I heard some relatives back in their hometown had an emergency. They've already returned the apartment. You're saying they moved out before dawn broke? That's right, around 5 a.m. A moving company's truck was parked outside, making such a racket that it woke me right up. The old woman's words hit me like a bucket of icy water, drenching me straight to the bone. Moved out before dawn? Then who on earth was behind that intense, shadow-like sensation of being watched? Alongside Bai Wei on our morning commute today, my head spun violently, and my back instantly broke out in a cold sweat. If the person trailing us this morning wasn't Yi, that could only mean one terrifying thing. Aside from Yi creeping outside my window last night, there was another pair of eyes lingering in broad daylight, staring daggers into us. Was it that stocky weirdo from yesterday, the fugitive serial killer on the loose, or the true, hidden mastermind of that stormy night from my past life? Suppressing my shock and overwhelming unease, I tightly gripped Bai Wei's hand, deciding we needed to get back home first before figuring out our next move. At the moment we reached our front doorstep, we found an uninvited guest waiting in the hallway. A middle-aged man dressed in a high-end suit, with his hair meticulously combed without a single strand out of place. His brows were furrowed deep, his face pale as he paced back and forth, exuding the suffocating aura of a privileged man holding back a furious rage. The second she clearly recognized who it was, Bai Wei froze stiff beside me, subconsciously squeezing my hand tight. Dad, so you still remember I'm your father? Bai Changfeng lunged forward, yanking Bai Wei away from me with a single jerk. Bai Wei, do you have any idea what the hell you're doing right now? Your mother is still lying in a hospital bed. Your mother is still currently confined to a hospital bed. So sick she isn't even conscious right now. Yet you have the absolute heart to abandon her. Not only that, you're a young girl. Yet you've already run off to live under the same roof with a boy. What on earth has happened to your self-respect and dignity? Faced with her father's vicious tongue-lashing, Bai Wei's eye sockets instantly turned red. Yet this time, she refused to back down an inch. Instead, she violently yanked her arm free from Bai Changfeng's grip. What right do you have to lecture me? Back then, you were the one who abandoned my mother. If it weren't for you, she never would have ended up like this. What do you children know about adult matters? Have I ever skimped on a monthly allowance I send you? Now that your mother is sick, you dare run away. Pack your things right now and come back to the Bai household with me. I will not allow my own daughter to behave so disgracefully out here. I'm not going. I don't want to have any connection with you whatsoever, and I especially refuse to set foot inside your damn Bai household. As for my mother's illness, I'll figure out a way myself. You don't need to meddle in our lives. Bai Changfeng, shaking with rage, reached out his hand to violently grab Bai Wei by the arm. I instantly stepped forward like a towering wall, shielding Bai Wei securely behind me, as I met Bai Changfeng's furious gaze with an icy stare. Mr. Bai Wei has already made herself crystal clear. She has no intention of going anywhere with you. Trying to force her like this is a pretty terrible look. Gu Nansheng, don't for a second think that your Gu family's little bit of influence gives you the right to bewitch and lead my daughter astray. This is strictly a private family matter for the Bai family. He glared at Bai Wei, who was tightly shielded behind me, and then back at my frigid, unyielding eyes. Weighing his options, he ultimately forced down his impulse to forcefully drag her away by sheer force. Gu Nancheng, you listen to me very carefully. If you dare let her suffer even the slightest grievance, my Bai family will risk everything we have. Even if it costs me this old life, I will never let you off the hook. With that, Bai Changfeng shot Bai Wei one final venomous glare, and accompanied by heavy, thudding footsteps, he stormed off in a furious fit of rage and helplessness, swiping his sleeve away as he vanished down the end of the hallway. Watching Bai Changfeng vanish around the corner of the hallway, I gently led Bai Wei inside and locked the door tight. Bai Wei, still looking crestfallen, quietly walked into the kitchen to pour some water while I sat down on the sofa, my brows knitting together in deep thought. Bai Chengfeng's heartbroken expression from moments ago, along with that protective, fiercely devoted stance of a concerned father, suddenly stirred up a deeply unsettling feeling of unnatural discord in my gut. Something was seriously wrong. Back then, he had been heartless enough to abandon his wife and child, going over 15 years without a single word. And even when Li Fengji had completely lost her mind, he never once showed his face. Why on earth would he suddenly rush over to my doorstep today and put on such an act of caring about his daughter's well-being? Suppressing my mounting suspicions, I casually reached out to turn on the computer monitor linked to the security cameras. The second the screen lit up, my pupils contracted violently. It was that stocky guy, the slightly overweight man, with drooping eyes, who had appeared on camera last night. At this very moment, he was back in the grassy yard directly beneath my apartment, hiding behind an electricity pole and stealthily peeping up toward my window. There's a road to heaven, yet you refuse to take it, choosing instead to deliver yourself right to my doorstep. Today, I'm going to unmask you once and for all. I immediately whipped out my phone and dialed Jiang Yin. This place wasn't far from here. Bring your gear and get down to my building right now. There's a tail we need to corner from both ends. Don't let him get away. 5 minutes later, Jiang Yin panted as he arrived at the other end of the alley. I gave him a sharp hand signal, and the two of us closed in like a pair of iron pliers, charging straight toward the stocky man from left and right. Cop! Just as he tried to bolt, Jiang Yin cut off his escape route while I lunged in from behind, delivering a vicious kick to the back of his knees. The fat man let out a miserable shriek and collapsed hard onto the pavement. I seized the opportunity to twist his arms behind his back, slamming his face squarely against a rough concrete wall. You've been stalking us for 2 whole days. Who the hell sent you? Big boss, please spare my life. My arm's gonna break, it's gonna break. I didn't do anything. You didn't do anything? Then why the hell were you loitering around here? Spill the truth right now, or I'll smash every single tooth out of your mouth today. I'll talk, I swear. 3 days ago, a masked woman sought me out, and she told you to commit a crime or carry out a kidnapping. Were you also the one tracking us along the street this morning? No way, big boss. I'd never dare pull any illegal stunts like that. The person who hired me only handed over your photographs and address, instructing me to keep watch every single day and log down what time you guys leave and return home, plus whether any other adults are inside the house. I swear on my life, I absolutely did not track you guys out on the streets. My only job was to park myself at the entrance of this residential compound and record the timestamps. That's all. What did this woman look like? Who was she? I honestly have no clue. She paid me the cash and vanished without a trace, not even leaving behind a contact number. Big boss, I'm just a guy trying to make a living here. I'll give back the deposit money right now. So please, I'm begging you, just spare me. I stared straight into the fat man's panicked eyes, and my years of criminal intuition told me he wasn't lying. He really was just a low-level lookout, being exploited by someone else. The clue had hit a dead end once again. I loosened my grip and let the stocky man scramble away on all fours, fleeing out of the alley, while Jiang Yin stood nearby, shouting curses. I, on the other hand, was overwhelmed by a wave of unprecedented exhaustion and frustration. The person tracking us on the street this morning wasn't this fat guy, nor was it Yi Zi who had already moved away. The true culprit remained a phantom-like enigma, hiding without a single flaw. And whoever hired the fat man solely to track our daily schedules meant one terrifying thing. Our opponent was meticulously planning a terrifyingly airtight trap. After sending Jiang Yan off, I returned inside the apartment alone. My Wei had already fallen asleep. I wearily collapsed onto the sofa, massaging my throbbing temples as I raised my head to gaze at the wall-mounted surveillance monitor overlooking the first-floor entrance. Outside the window sill, facing the main street of the complex, everything looked completely normal. Wait. My eyes suddenly snapped back and locked onto camera screen number 2. That was the infrared camera, installed diagonally above the front entrance, tasked with covering the blind spots in the hallway. Yesterday, when I personally installed and adjusted the lens, the bottom right corner of the screen clearly showed a clear view of the red fire extinguisher cabinet. Yet right now the image had shifted by about 15 degrees, making the fire extinguisher vanish completely from the screen and replacing it with a massive visual blind spot at the edge of the corridor. The blood in my veins completely froze solid. At this exact fraction of a second, someone had tampered with my security camera. This definitely wasn't caused by the wind. The camera was securely bolted to the wall with heavy-duty screws. Just moments ago, when Jiang Yan and I were downstairs cornering the fat man, we had only been gone for about 10 minutes. In those 10 agonizingly short minutes, someone had stealthily crept up to my front door, expertly evading the direct line of sight and applying external force to twist the camera's angle, deliberately engineering a blind spot in our surveillance. The true demon lurking in the shadows had been standing right outside my doorstep just now. Sitting alone on the living room sofa, I stared fixedly at the camera that had been twisted to create a blind spot on screen while my brain rapidly connected every single event that had transpired today. The strange, stocky man from earlier, the shady shadow sneaking around the window at night, and now the culprit who had covertly altered the camera angle. With all these actions pieced together, the person I suspected the most was still Yi Zi with that jarring contrast of his. Just as I was furrowing my brows and pondering his motives, knock, knock. The front door was suddenly struck. I opened it on high alert, only to find that the person standing outside was none other than Jiang Yan, who had just left. Why did you come back? Bro, I almost forgot. Yi Zi asked me to return these 2 things to you this morning. Oh, what kind of things? He asked me to give these back to you, and he even specifically told me to pass along a message. He said that last night, he actually did come down to your building, intending to return them to you in person, and to thank you for always helping him out. But it was getting way too late, and he didn't want to disturb the 2 of you resting, so he just stood outside for a bit and left. Hearing Jiang Yan's words made a loud ringing echo inside my head. Did Yi Zi really only appear outside the window at 1 a.m. just to return stuff? Did his family really move away? Meaning he never tracked me on the street at all, let alone had the time to sneak up and twist my security camera? My suspicions regarding Yi Zi, at this very fraction of a second, completely shattered into dust. My only remaining exit had been severed once again, leaving me slumped back against the sofa, my heart plunging into an abyss of utter confusion and despair. If it wasn't Yi Zi, then who on earth was the culprit that tampered with the camera? Just who else was secretly watching my every move in the shadows? Right as I hit a dead end, Jiang Yan beside me suddenly pulled out his phone, bringing up a photo right in front of my face. Oh, that's right, bro. I've been meaning to ask you, is the guy in this picture some undercover bodyguard your family hired to watch your back? I keep spotting him lurking around your area. Just now, while I was cornering that fat man in the alley, I caught this guy prowling outside your building again. I snapped my head up instantly, snatching the phone from his grip. The photo had been snapped secretly from a dark street corner, featuring a man wearing a baseball cap, whose profile was only partially visible from behind. I stared fixedly at the silhouette in the photograph, displayed on Jiang Yan's screen, and without a moment's hesitation, I grabbed my own phone, snapped the image right off his screen, and forwarded it directly to my mother. The very next second, I dialed her number. Hello, Mom. Is the person in this photo someone arranged by our family? The other end of the line fell dead silent for 2 seconds, followed by the sound of my mother's absolute astonishment. My son, how on earth did you spot Uncle? That's a veteran mercenary, whom your father spent a small fortune to hire. Your parents really couldn't rest easy leaving you to live alone, so he specially retained him to take charge of protecting your safety from the shadows. He's been tailing you for a while now. I never expected you to discover him. Hearing the phrase veteran mercenary made my tense nervous system violently jolt. He was only checking to see if there were any hidden dangers lurking around you. He wasn't actually interfering with your private life. If you feel uncomfortable about it, your dad and I can have him stand down. No need, Mom. It's just that recently, near the living room window where by Wei stays, we discovered some abnormal footprints, which made me suspect there might be real danger. He's there to keep watch over your safety. Why would he be hanging around the living room window? Didn't you mention before that Bai Wei would be staying in your living room? So I thought I'd have him drop by to double check if the living room windows were sturdy enough and whether the security bars were completely secure. I'll text you his contact number right now. Click. The call ended in a flash. A string of digits popped up on my phone screen. Damn, that's seriously a bodyguard hired by your family? A veteran mercenary at that. Bro, the security clearance level at your house is insane. I ignored Jiang Yan's awestruck exclamations, my gaze glued to the sequence of numbers on the screen. My mind was spinning. A veteran mercenary? Huh? If that was genuinely the case, then all those bizarre, unexplainable phenomena suddenly had the most logical explanation possible. The dusty fingerprints outside the window and the security camera that had been shifted out of place moments ago were overwhelmingly likely caused by this veteran mercenary while he was conducting a perimeter security check around the house, or perhaps because he was deliberately trying to bypass my electronic monitoring system, inadvertently leaving behind those traces. The clues seemed to have reached a dead end once again, and the breakthrough we thought we finally had vanished into thin air at that exact fraction of a second. I needed to get in touch with this mercenary immediately to confirm if the fingerprints on the window and the shifted camera were his doing. I drew in a deep breath and dialed the number my mother had sent. The phone rang only once before it was instantly picked up. Hello, young master. Is something the matter? The fingerprints on the living room window and the security camera by the door. Was it your handiwork? Ha ha ha, young master. Your tactical awareness is truly top-notch. I must say, your vigilance puts even the rookies I used to train to shame. Young master, this afternoon while I was inspecting all the potential security hazards around the perimeter, I noticed that the ceiling screws in your living room were all rusted and completely loose, so they could easily snap with just a little bit of force. So I went ahead and replaced them all with high-strength titanium alloy screws. I even purposefully aged them and smeared a bit of dust on them, though I never expected the dust on my gloves to leave smudges on the glass. As for that security camera, your original setup at the front door was decent for basic anti-theft. Yet for any professional intruder, there was a 1-second visual blind spot right along the side, so I just casually tweaked it to fix it for you. I understand now, Uncle Dao. Thank you for all your hard work. Click. After hanging up the phone, I tiptoed back into the living room. Bai Wei was fast asleep, breathing evenly as I walked over to the window, underneath the faint glimmer of the outdoor lights. I carefully inspected the edges of the security bars. Sure enough, those screws that looked rusted to the eye had already been swapped out with brand new, ultra-sturdy materials. Only their surfaces were masterfully disguised. I let out a massive sigh of relief. No creepy perverts, no professional assassins. All these terrifying, ghostly phenomena turned out to be nothing more than my family's elite bodyguard, clearing out potential security hazards. However, the moment this final thread of tension was finally unraveled, what came crashing down in its place was a crushing wave of overwhelming exhaustion and disorientation capable of drowning a person. I sat wearily on the sofa, gazing at the empty room. The fat man took money to work, and the clues hit a dead end. Yi had moved away, completely clearing him of any suspicion. The gang possessed an airtight alibi, and the serial fugitive on the run had nothing to do with the past life's murder case. Every single clue had been severed, and the malicious enemy from that stormy night, who had ruthlessly seized Bai Wei's knife and stripped away her life, still remained an unformed phantom. hiding perfectly within the boundless sea of humanity. This infuriating sense of helplessness of punching cotton, combined with the extreme tension of the past 2 days, and catching a chill out in the rain last night, finally at this exact fraction of a second completely shattered the defense barriers of my body. I felt my vision begin to blur, everything around me spinning out of control. My stomach churned violently while my throat burned like a raging fire. I tried to stand up to pour a glass of water, but my legs turned to jelly, causing me to collapse hard against the sofa, losing consciousness entirely. Felt myself plunging headfirst into a blazing furnace. The bloody stormy night of my past life, intertwined relentlessly with Bai Wei's deathly pale face, torturing my mind over and over inside the nightmare. Nansheng, wake up! Amidst the hazy fever dream, a gentle voice, overflowing with anxiety, echoed endlessly beside my ear, while a wonderfully soothing coolness suddenly pressed against my forehead, fighting desperately to suppress the blazing inferno, surging wildly through my body. I forced my heavy eyelids open with agonizing effort. As my vision refocused, I saw Bai Wei's small, delicate face, fraught with worry and even somewhat ashen. Nansheng, you're finally awake. You scared me to death. Why on earth are you running such a high fever? I tried to move my lips, only to find my throat so hoarse I couldn't utter a single word. I attempted to sit up, only to realize I was lying down on a bed, inside the master bedroom, covered by a thick blanket, with a cold, damp towel still resting across my forehead. I'm fine. It's probably just from catching a chill last night. What do you mean just a chill? Your temperature was 39.8 degrees. When I woke up this morning, I found you collapsed on the sofa, completely unresponsive no matter how I called you, burning up like a stove. Drink some water to soothe that dry throat first. I already called in sick to the head teacher for you. So we're staying home to rest today. The warm water flowed past my parched, dry throat, bringing back a shred of vitality. I watched her bustling about, noticing the dark circles under her eyes, proving that ever since she discovered my fever, she had been loyally guarding my bedside, without leaving for even a single step. Take this fever reducer. She gently guided the medicine to my lips. If your fever doesn't break by this afternoon, we're going straight to the hospital for an 4 drip. Then, she took both of her hands and tightly gripped mine. Nansheng, don't be afraid. Even though I don't know what you're worrying about, it's my turn to take care of you now. Just go ahead and sleep peacefully. I'm not going anywhere, and I'll stay right here to watch over you. Gazing into her resolute eyes and feeling the warmth radiating from her hands, my nerves, which had been taut like a snapped bowstring, finally achieved true relaxation. Under the combined influence of the medication and the fever, I closed my eyes once more and sank back into a deep sleep. In my dream, I was dragged back to my past life. An enthusiastic colleague greeted me. Hey buddy, regarding the case you've been tracking, we finally cracked it. It's solved, and you'll never guess. It's someone we know. We caught the bastard. Hurry up and go take a look. I hurriedly demanded, who is it? A blinding flash of white light exploded across my eyes, and I snapped awake, waking up once more. The sky outside the window had already turned dark. The twilight glow slipped past the curtains, casting a warm, reddish-orange hue across the bedsheets. I felt my body was much less sore and aching, and the fever on my forehead had finally broken. I gently tilted my head sideways, only to find Bai Wei slumped over, fast asleep, right at the edge of the bed. She looked completely exhausted, with faint dark circles lingering beneath her eyes, while her hand was still tightly clutching the cool towel that had been used to bring down my fever, sending a chill down my spine. It was as if she sensed the subtle change in my breathing pattern. She jolted awake instantly like a startled little fawn. Thank goodness, your fever finally broke. Nansheng, are you hungry? I still have some white porridge warming in the pot. I'll go get some for you. Don't rush. Just stay here with me for a moment. I gripped her hand tightly, feeling the genuine warmth radiating from her palm, greedily clinging to the pulse beating against her wrist, and gazing at her vibrant, beautiful self right before my eyes for a long moment. An unprecedented wave of violent panic suddenly coiled around my heart like a venomous snake, squeezing it mercilessly. This was the very first time since my rebirth that I had felt this utterly terrified. I was terrified that all of this was merely a prolonged dream. Terrified that once I tracked down the real culprit, completely altered her tragic fate, and fulfilled everything, this anomalous rebirth that defied the laws of time would abruptly come to an end. Would I be dragged mercilessly back to that chilling timeline, where only her cold tombstone existed? I selfishly wanted time to freeze forever at this exact fraction of a second. If I simply stopped investigating, if I just locked her away inside this safe room, guarded securely by cameras, could the two of us just go on like this and live out a quiet, peaceful life? Yet, gazing into the absolute trust she placed in me without a single trace of hesitation, I suddenly clenched my teeth hard. Nanshan, what's wrong? Are you feeling dizzy again? I'm Fine. My mind's just a bit clearer now, and I'm kind of hungry. Got it. Lean back here and don't move. I'll go get it for you. And you've still got to take your temperature after eating. Watching Bai Wei obediently walk out of the bedroom and pull the door shut behind her, the gentle expression on my face instantly vanished, replaced entirely by an extreme, chilling ruthlessness and an unshakable determination. I gripped my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned dead white from the pressure. A sudden bolt of lightning flashed across my brain. The veteran mercenary Uncle Dao. If my mother mentioned that. Uncle Dao had been secretly guarding me for a while now. Then last week's stormy Friday night, he most certainly must have been stationed nearby. That night, Bai Wei braved the rain to knock on my door, only to later walk her doomed down that pitch-black alley. In this life, even though she fortuitously took refuge in my apartment, that monster, lurking in the shadows, who intended to strike her down, had probably been tailing her the entire time. It was highly likely that he had tracked Bai Wei, and even followed her all the way to the base of my building. If that really was the case, then Uncle Dao, the man tasked with secretly protecting me, whose eyes had witnessed countless brushes with death, would absolutely have noticed the tail trailing behind Bai Wei. Without a shred of hesitation, I rapidly pulled up the unsaved number and dialed the call. The phone barely rang for half a second before the other end picked up. Uncle Dao, it's me. Young master, are you feeling better? Do you have any instructions for me? Uncle Dao, last Friday night during the heavy rain around 9:30 p.m., a soaking wet girl came and knocked on my door. At that time, you must have been keeping watch around my apartment building, right? That's correct. I was up on the roof of the opposite building at the time, checking for any perimeter blind spots. I definitely saw that young lady come and knock on your door. Then at that moment, did you happen to notice any suspicious person tailing closely behind her? In other words, was there anyone who tracked her all the way near my house and even stealthily kept watch over her? As soon as I asked this question, I felt the surrounding air freeze solid in an instant. The other end of the line fell silent for a brief moment, with only a faint, static crackle irritatingly stimulating my eardrums. That static hum lasted for barely 2 seconds, before Uncle Dao's deep, low voice resonated through the speaker. Young master, there actually was someone holding. My heart felt as though it had been smashed by a heavy sledgehammer, causing the blood in my veins to instantly boil over. That night, the rain was pouring heavily. That person wore a long black raincoat and a face mask trailing about 50 meters behind. The young lady at a distance, neither too far nor too close. Right up until he saw her enter your apartment building, that individual stood under the street lamp across the way for roughly 2 or 3 minutes before turning around and leaving. From then on, this person never showed up again. In my past life, Bai Wei never made it into my apartment, giving that monster the golden opportunity to strike her down inside that dark alley. Yet in this life, because Bai Wei took refuge inside my home, she completely slipped out of the killer's crosshairs, meaning he could only stand out in the rain and watch his prey escape, forcing him to helplessly give up. Uncle Dao, did you get a clear look at his face back then? Can you track down who on earth this person is? The rain was way too heavy, the street lamps were dim, and that guy was completely bundled up. It really wasn't possible to get a clear look at his face. However, even though I didn't give chase at the time, I vividly remember which alley he turned into when he left. Young master, as long as he passed through there, He most certainly left behind traces. Uncle Dow, I want you to track down who he is. Hanging up the phone, I drew in a deep, steady breath, pulling back all the murderous intent swirling in my eyes. At that exact moment, the bedroom door was gently pushed open. Nanchung, the porridge is done cooking, and the temperature is just right. Gazing at her gentle, serene appearance clad in an apron, the surging frenzy in my heart, driven by the impending truth, was instantly pacified and washed away. The doctor said that after a fever breaks, your digestive system is still weak. So eat something light to line your stomach first. You've been taking care of me the whole time. Have you eaten yet? I ate a small bowl in the kitchen already. Just hurry up and eat. Stop talking so much. Oh my. This patient has no strength to lift his arms. So I guess I'll have to trouble nurse Bai to feed me spoonful by spoonful. Bai Wei shot me a playful, reproachful glare. Inside this warm, cozy bedroom, all those dark plots and murderous intentions lingering outside seemed completely isolated and shut out. The following morning, I escorted Bai Wei to school and quietly had Uncle Dao shadow her in secret. The moment the door clicked shut, and I was certain Bai Wei had left the area, the gentle look in my eyes instantly vanished. I swiftly changed into a set of dark clothes and stepped outside wearing a baseball cap. Half an hour later, I met up with Uncle Dao in the back alley behind an internet cafe, located near the crime scene. Young master, these are all the security camera footage files from private owners in that district from last Friday night. I spent the entire night copying all of them. Thank you for your hard work. Uncle Dao, we both watched the video intently, though somewhat grainy, due to the heavy downpour. The moment that person walked directly under the street lamp, his silhouette was still exposed. Gazing at the height and the unique gait displayed on the screen, I rapidly sifted through the memories stored inside, my head filtering through every single person I had ever crossed paths with. In a flash, a specific name surfaced within my mind. Lin Tianhai. There was no way I was mistaken. This height and physical build definitely belonged to him. Lin Tianhai, the younger brother of Lin Shi. Ja, Bai Wei's stepmother. Fei Loit. The sound of keys clinking echoed by the door, as Bai Wei walked in carrying her school bag. And upon seeing me sitting on the sofa, she hurried over. Nanchung, are you feeling any better? Is your head still spinning? I'm fine now. My fever is completely gone, don't worry. That's a relief. All day at school I was worrying nonstop, terrified that you'd be stuck at home alone with no one to look after you. We cuddled together on the sofa for a while, basking in the quiet serenity. Then I faded my smile and looked straight into her eyes. Bai Wei, I have to go away on business for about 2 days. 2 days? But your health only just recovered. It's fine, just some personal matters I need to handle. I'll be back in no time. For these next 2 days, just stay obediently at home and wait for me. Don't go anywhere, okay? All right, I'll wait for you at home. Just make sure you look out for your safety while you're out. Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Thick, heavy dark clouds blanketed the sky. And before long, a torrential downpour began to pour. Bai Wei, terrified of thunder and lightning during storms, was currently curled up tightly on the sofa, wrapping herself snugly in a thin blanket, while right at this moment, I was standing inside an abandoned building in Jiangxing, wearing a mask and a voice modulator. I stood right in front of a young man who was blindfolded, with both of his hands tightly bound behind his back. His name was Lin Tianhai, the target of my investigation over the past few days. He had a habit of going jogging every morning, and I had seized that opportunity to snatch him and bring him here. In my past life as a police officer, I had to strictly obey the law. Yet right now, in order to swiftly wrench the truth out of him, I had to resort to some unconventional tactics. My family doesn't have any money. Just let me go and I swear I won't call the cops. If I was after money, what good would kidnapping you do me? Now, I'm going to ask you questions, so you'd better answer obediently. Catching you so easily proves that I have total control over everything about you. So don't try any funny business. I pressed a cold glass bottle gently against his neck, trapped within the terrifying embrace of the darkness. He instantly started shaking like a leaf. Go ahead and ask. I'll tell you everything I know. Think carefully. Half a month ago on a stormy Friday night, what on earth were you doing? Refusing to provide a specific timestamp was meant to amplify the psychological pressure on him. Sure, Enough, he panicked, desperately scrambling through his memories as he stammered, claiming he had a study date with a female classmate named Xiao Yu that lasted well into the evening. If I were to drop a few caustic chemicals onto this pretty face of yours, I'm sure it would look drastically different, wouldn't it? No, wait, don't. I'll talk. I'll tell you the truth. That afternoon, I really did have a date with a girl. But at night, I went outside. What did you go outside for? I want to tail a girl. To abandon a girl waiting at home. And instead, brave the rain just to stalk another girl? Give me a good reason to believe. You're telling the truth. My older sister asked me to do it. Lin Tianhai's older sister was none other than the current wife of Bai Chengfeng, Lin Xia. I instantly grabbed his thumb to unlock his phone via fingerprint scanner and pulled up his chat history from that fateful night. Sure enough, the chat logs explicitly detailed how Lin Xia had ordered Lin Tianhai to ditch his female classmate back home, hurry downstairs, and trail closely behind Bai Wei as she left the estate. Previously, I still couldn't fathom why Lin Tianhai would arrange a study date with his girlfriend at home, only to venture out into the storm anyway. Such an utterly baffling sequence of actions. Now, everything was crystal clear. According to the chat history, Lin Tianhai had stalked Bai Wei all the way down to the base of my building. And upon discovering that Bai Wei had entered a guy's apartment, Lin Xia told him to wait for a few minutes. Seeing that Bai Wei didn't come back out, she instructed him to head home. That meant during that stormy night in my past life, Lin Tianhai's surveillance run had concluded the exact moment Bai Wei knocked on my door. It had ended completely right there. Yet if Lin Tianhai was only responsible for tailing her, and never committed any vicious acts himself, then what on earth did Bai Wei run into during her past life? Based on the autopsy report from my previous life, Bai Wei's clothes were somewhat disheveled, yet her body bore no signs of a desperate struggle, strangulation, or physical suppression. This indicated clearly that she hadn't been ambushed and forced into a violent altercation, and the murder weapon was actually the knife Bai Wei had carried herself. The only plausible possibility was that afterward, Lin Xia tracked down Bai Wei, resulting in a fierce confrontation between the two of them, given Lin Xia's overpowering need for control and her intense hostility toward the stepchild of her husband's former wife. The conversation likely broke down entirely, ultimately sparking a sudden burst of lethal violence, with the deduction. Reaching this point, even though conclusive direct evidence was still lacking, the full picture of the truth had already emerged. At the very least, the trail concerning Lin Tianhai had reached its conclusion. Get lost, and don't ever look back. Otherwise, you already know what the consequences will be. Lin Tianhai, acting as though he had just been granted a miraculous pardon, scrambled away on all fours and fled the abandoned building in terror. I climbed up to the rooftop all by myself, letting the chilling rain pour relentlessly over my body. The freezing water helped sharpen my mind rapidly. The purpose of my rebirth was twofold. First, to unmask the true culprit, and second, to protect Bai Wei from ever suffering harm again. Right now, Bai Wei was safe inside my apartment, as long as I made an effort going forward to prevent her from encountering Lin Xia. Those latent hazards would completely cease to exist. As for the actual mastermind behind the murder, my target was now firmly locked onto Lin Xia. Yet concrete, direct evidence of the crime was still missing. I had successfully altered Bai Wei's destiny. But what if the true culprit was someone else entirely? Right at that exact second, a deafening bolt of lightning tore across the sky, instantly illuminating the entire city below. The very next moment, my vision went completely black, followed by a bizarre sequence of shifting, surreal lights. When I finally snapped back to my senses, I discovered Bai Wei, standing beside me out of nowhere. She wasn't standing. She was actually hovering in midair. Am I dreaming again? I muttered in shock, staring at the surreal scene. The Bai Wei before me now looked no different from how she appeared in my dreams, back when I was still a police officer. In my previous life, she wore a faint, gentle smile on her lips, yet her expression carried a profound, heartbreaking sorrow, just silently gazing down at me, without uttering a single word. Seeing this familiar version of Bai Wei appear, I almost thought I had somehow been transmigrated back in time again. I immediately looked around, realizing I wasn't standing on the rooftop of the police precinct, but rather right outside the door of my own apartment. Just as my heart was gripped by confusion, the next second, a completely soaking wet girl slowly walked into view down the hallway. Water dripped relentlessly from the ends of her hair down into her collar, and hugging her arms tightly around herself, she slowly trudged right up to my front door. At this moment, as I stood right beside her, I was shocked to discover that this past version of Bai Wei seemed completely unable to see me. Confused, I turned my head to look at the phantom Bai Wei hovering beside me, only to see her glance at me with an unreadable expression before turning her gaze back toward her past physical self. Seeing this, I turned back as well to look at the drenched Bai Wei standing right before us. She stood outside the door without immediately ringing the doorbell. Instead, she hesitated, seemingly lost in deep thought and doubt. After a long while, she slowly raised her hand, only to freeze just inches before touching the doorbell. After hesitating once more, she drew in a deep, trembling breath, gathered every ounce of her courage, and pressed the buzzer. Accompanied by the echoing chime, her entire body trembled uncontrollably as she hurriedly yanked her hand back, clutching herself tightly in a mix of overwhelming embarrassment and confusion. Not long after, the door swung open, and the person opening it was none other than my past self. This was the very first time I was laying eyes on my past self from the perspective of a third-party observer. At this moment, whether I was dreaming or experiencing something else entirely, I was standing right beside them anyway, and neither my past self nor Bai Wei could see me. I didn't overthink it, and simply observed in silence. Just like in my memories, Bai Wei asked to stay over, back then being so young, and terrified that her parents would find out and scold her. I hadn't dared to casually let a girl, dressed in thin, translucent white clothes, stay at my apartment, thinking she was just facing some difficulty and had no money for the ride home. I offered to escort her back instead. I turned around to grab a raincoat and umbrella, but as a result, the exact moment I turned my back, Bai Wei flashed a hesitant look before turning away in crushing sorrow. Witnessing this scene, I ignored my past self who was searching around the house for an umbrella and immediately gave chase, because while I knew full well what I was doing back then, I had no idea whatsoever what Bai Wei went through on that tragic night after facing my rejection. Even if this was nothing more than a dream, I desperately wanted to witness what the dream would reconstruct of her final hours. I chased after Bai Wei, watching an utterly dazed girl who had nowhere left to go and no clue where to walk. She didn't want me to know about her family's harsh financial struggles, so she hadn't dared let me walk her home. Yet after turning down my kind intentions, where was she supposed to go? The world was so vast, yet there was not a single place left for her to belong. Her parents' house, the one place she used to consider her true home, seemed to have no room for her anymore. She wandered aimlessly until she reached a convenience store, where her stomach suddenly let out a hunger rumble. Remembering she hadn't eaten anything since earlier that day, she dug out her very last bills and bought a single piece of bread and a carton of milk for dinner. The convenience store clerk looked at her, completely soaked like a drowned rat, showed her concern by handing her a towel to dry herself off, and as she left, kindly gifted her an umbrella as well. Just bring it back to me next time. With rain this heavy, letting a young girl soak out in this weather isn't good for your health. Bai Wei wanted to refuse, but could only express her gratitude for the clerk's kindness. She opened up the umbrella, and just as she was about to leave, she accidentally caught sight of a familiar figure, gazing intently in that direction. She saw Yi Zi being cornered and brutally beaten by 3 thugs in a dark alcove. After a brief moment of hesitation, she bravely stepped forward. "You guys stop this right now. If you keep bullying him, I'm going to call the cops." She panicked while searching her pockets for her phone, only to suddenly remember that her phone had been smashed to pieces by her mother before she left. Seeing the young girl patting her empty pockets with nothing inside, "Looks like this little beauty forgot to bring her phone when she went out, huh? If you want us to stop bullying him, sure. Why don't you stay here with us instead?" Right as the 3 thugs closed in on Bai Wei, Yi Zi, who had quietly endured the beatings until then, without offering any resistance, suddenly struggled to his feet and threw himself in front of Bai Wei. This has nothing to do with her. Get out of here right now. Think you can leave now? Too late. Grab her for me. Seeing the two men attempt to grab Bai Wei, Yi Zi, someone who had always endured in silence, suddenly snapped. A person who is usually loud and quick to anger isn't terrifying, but a quiet, gentle soul who is pushed to the absolute edge and loses control is a truly terrifying sight. Yi Zi lunged at the three thugs like a rabid dog, absorbing a barrage of punches and kicks head-on, yet using every single fiber of his body and every available limb to counterattack. One thug had his arm locked tightly in Yi Zi's jaws, wincing in agony. The very next second, Yi Zi locked onto another target, clinging stubbornly to their onslaught no matter how they battered him, coming dangerously close to ripping a chunk of flesh straight out of the guy's arm. It wasn't until the other fellow was in so much pain, he dropped to his knees and begged Yi Zi for mercy that he finally let go. Seeing their two buddies mauled so savagely, the blonde-haired thug was completely terrified. The mild-mannered fear the arrogant, while the arrogant fear those who have nothing left to lose. This kid was an absolute lunatic. The three of them could only spit out a parting threat, full of malicious venom, before scrambling away in panic. I knew full well those three thugs were carrying knives, yet they were merely cowards looking to bully the weak, and completely lacked the guts to actually kill anyone. Yi Zi's absolute recklessness had completely shattered their nerves and scared the wits out of them. It was right at that moment that the realization finally hit me. Those mysterious injuries on Yi Zi's body that I had witnessed back at school in my previous life were indeed sustained while protecting Bai Wei. Seeing that the three thugs had fled, Yi Zi, completely exhausted and ignoring the torrential rain pouring down, collapsed heavily into a puddle of muddy water. Are you all right? I'm fine. Thanks. We're all classmates here. No need to be so polite. You protected me just now anyway. So we're even now, Bai Wei said with a gentle smile. As she reached out to help him up, Yi Zi stared at her extended hand, perhaps feeling too self-conscious about his muddy hands to take it, choosing instead to prop himself up off the ground on his own. He walked over to a nearby trash can, picked up his drop school bag, unzipped the main compartment, and verified that the clean handkerchief inside was still safe, only then letting out a sigh of relief. Your umbrella is broken, so you can use mine instead. But this umbrella belongs to that convenience store down the street. You should return it when you're done. If I take this umbrella, what about you? It's fine. I actually feel like walking in the rain for a bit, so I don't need an umbrella. Yi Zi, being sharp-eyed and perceptive, swiftly picked up on her unusual demeanor. Did something upset you? It's nothing. Just family stuff. Realizing it was a family matter, Yi Zi knew it wasn't his place to pry further. Yet how could he bear to take the girl's umbrella and leave her to stand out in the pouring rain? Just as she hesitated, Bai Wei thrust the umbrella straight into his hands, and before he could react, she plunged headfirst into the thick, pitch-black curtain of rain, vanishing from sight in the blink of an eye. Left with no choice, Yi Zi had no option but to take the umbrella home. It was only now that everything finally clicked in my mind. No wonder the convenience store umbrella was missing from the crime scene. It turned out she had given it to Yi Zi, out there in the pouring rain, aside from Bai Wei, who was blindly stumbling, wandering blindly ahead all by herself. I spotted yet another shadow lurking in the distance. Lin Tianhai. He was desperately trying to dodge the surrounding security cameras, while slinking through the rain, tailing closely behind Bai Wei. Having already interrogated Lin Tianhai and learned of his surveillance, I wasn't surprised in the slightest. What intrigued me most right now was what had actually transpired. At the crime scene itself, I turned my head to gaze at the silent phantom standing beside me. The ghostly Bai Wei and I walked closely right up front, shadowing the past version of Bai Wei as she trudged forward like a hollow, soulless corpse. The freezing rain soaking through her back drenched her entirely, yet she seemed to have lost all physical sensation, wandering aimlessly with no clue where to go. Before long, or perhaps after hours, she arrived in an old district completely devoid of functional surveillance coverage. Finally stumbling to a halt, she stood in a daze, under the eaves of an abandoned shelter, staring blankly at the relentless downpour before her. and silently zoning out. At this moment, standing right beside the hovering phantom of Bai Wei, from the objective perspective of an outsider, I observed everything unfolding right before my eyes. I saw Lin Tianhai hiding away in the pitch-black shadows, his fingers tapping frantically against his phone screen. Without even needing to look, I knew. He was definitely reporting Bai Wei's exact whereabouts to Lin Xia. It seemed Lin Xia was about to make her entrance. Inside my mind, I was already piecing together the impending clash that was about to take place. Next, the various individuals who left no trace in this rainy night began appearing one after another. I saw Jiang Yin peeling an apple inside a nearby garage. He answered a phone call and then hurriedly took his leave, casually slipping the fruit knife right into his pocket. There truly wasn't a second knife left behind at the scene. A frantic delivery guy hurried past in a rush. A perverted neighbor wearing a raincoat sneaked furtively into an adult toy shop, and after purchasing a few small items, he quickly departed. All around them, passers-by hurried back and forth while Bai Wei stood frozen under the eaves in a total trance. Like a fragile little statue stripped of its soul, she had no idea where in this vast world she was supposed to go, no longer knowing where she belonged. Her footsteps naturally frozen in place, unable to move forward. Not knowing how much time had slipped away, a figure clad in a raincoat suddenly materialized nearby. This figure wasn't tall at all. In fact, they were rather petite and slender. Right as Bai Wei was zoning out, the figure slowly stepped right up in front of her. The dim, flickering light was suddenly blocked out, causing Bai Wei to instantly jerk her head upward. Niaxi? I was completely frozen in absolute shock. I had assumed Lin Tianhai was communicating with Lin Xia, yet I never in a million years imagined that the person appearing here would actually be Bai Niaxi, Bai Wei's younger half-sister by a different mother, the very daughter born to Bai Chengfeng and Lin Xia. Why on earth is it her? My mind was swirling with a storm of questions. I had never once considered the possibility that this young girl could be present at the crime scene. Yet flash after flash, fragmented pieces of information about her began sparking in my mind. Bai Niaxi was naturally gifted with brilliant intelligence, consistently ranking at the top of her class with staggering academic excellence. In other words, she possessed a razor-sharp, highly mature intellect far beyond her years. Previously, I had completely overlooked her purely because of her age, but looking at it now, it was entirely possible that she had been impersonating her mother, pulling the strings behind Lin Tianhai and ordering him around. But could a mere girl like her really have sparked a conflict with Bai Wei fierce enough to trigger such a devastating catastrophe? I already guessed that given your state today, you definitely don't have a home to go back to. Bai Wei had never harbored a single malicious thought toward this younger sister of hers, yet she knew all too well that this sister had disliked her ever since they were kids. Even so, no matter how much she loathed her, surely she wouldn't brave a midnight rainstorm just to chase her all the way out here, running out into the dead of night, just to say these words? Naturally, that wasn't the case. I came here tonight simply to make a few things crystal clear to you. Don't ever come to our house again from now on. Neither my mother nor I can stand the sight of you. Your own mother is already waiting for you on the other side. Why do you still insist on coming here to steal my dad away from me? Within Bai Niaxi's eyes swirled a chilling malice far beyond her tender years. Just to spit out these words, you had to brave the dead of night and run all the way out here? Some things need to be said face to face, and we need to leave behind something concrete and binding to ensure you don't regret it later, Bai Niaxi said, pulling a waterproof pouch straight out of her raincoat pocket. I know you don't have a home to return to right now. There's 1,000 yuan in here. Take it. After that, sign this father-daughter severance agreement right now. And from this moment on, we have nothing to do with each other. Everything finally clicked in my mind. After discovering Bai Wei's utterly helpless and desperate plight, Bai Niaxi wanted to capitalize on her misery and use a wad of cash to force Bai Wei into signing this absurd, predatory contract to buy absolute peace of mind for her family forever. The entire reason she had ordered Lin Tianhai to tail her the entire way was simply to confirm whether Bai Wei truly had no escape routes left whatsoever. staring at the agreement thrust forward by Niaxi. Bai Wei let out a bitter, heartbreaking smile. She never would have dreamed that even when she had already been driven to such an absolute dead end, her own flesh and blood would still show up to kick her while she was down. The deepest agony imaginable is when a heart grows completely cold. At that moment, she couldn't care less about the 1,000 yuan. Her only remaining focus was protecting the last shred of pathetic, tattered dignity she had left. I will never sign this. Bai Wei, stop harboring such delusional, unrealistic fantasies. Haven't you realized it yet? Realized what? Realized that Dad doesn't give a single damn about you, and doesn't love you at all. Just look at what the weather is like today. Such a massive, violent storm. Yet when you walked out of our house earlier, he didn't even utter a single word to make you stay. Do you even know what that represents? It represents the fact that deep down in his heart, he never had any room for a daughter like you. By Niaxi's glacial, venomous words, felt like icy, poison blades, stabbing straight into Bai Wei's already shattered heart. The phrase "he never had any room for you" in his heart was like a venomous serpent that, during the days when her mother fell ill, had bitten and clawed at her heart a countless number of times. At this very moment, out in the torrential rainstorm, on a desolate street where the entire world had abandoned her, her own blood-related younger sister, standing in the posture of a ruthless, triumphant victor, delivered this proclamation, causing Bai Wei to feel deep within her mind that the frail thread desperately struggling to hold together. Her remaining willpower had completely snapped. All her previous despair surged forward like a thick, suffocating fog, engulfing her entirely. The chilling sting of being rejected outside her mother's door, the paralyzing numbness of having nowhere left to turn, the excruciating agony of her father's cold, callous indifference. All of it was the sound of a shattering heart. Truth be told, Bai Wei understood all of this deep down. Yet toward this broken, fractured family, she had always harbored a lingering, stubborn spark of hope. What drove her to persistently seek out her father was the fact that deep within her soul, the very last faint, fluorescent glow refused to extinguish itself. However, by Niaxi's harsh words, paired with that blinding, unsightly severance agreement, acted like a pair of cold, merciless hands that brutally shoved that final glimmer of light straight down into the cold, muddy mire of reality. The bitter smile frozen across Bai Wei's face grew rigid. She offered no more retorts, no more justifications. Any words spoken at this juncture would only sound utterly meaningless and absurdly laughable. She could feel something deep inside her body, rapidly growing ice cold. She felt her heart being gripped tightly by an invisible hand, while a suffocating, bone-chilling numbness spread across her limbs, as if the strength to stand on her own 2 feet had been drained away in a single instant. She raised her eyes to gaze at the calculated, scheming face of Bai Niaxi, whose features bore a striking resemblance to their father's. Her gaze chillingly hollow. "I'll take the money, but the agreement? I'm not signing it." Her voice held no trace of defiance anymore, leaving behind only a profound exhaustion and an ultimate, deadened calm. Signing it or not signing it, what difference did it even make? The tiny corner in her heart that dared to call him father had grown as freezing as this rain, losing its very last trace of warmth. Her heart had turned completely desolate. Bai Wei, stop acting so thick-skinned. Seeing that Bai Wei refused to submit even under these circumstances, Bai Niaxi snapped in absolute fury. Right at that moment, a chilling glint flashed as Bai Wei pulled a cold fruit knife straight out of her pocket, the very self-defense weapon she had carried away from her mother's house. At the split second, not only was Bai Niaxi terrified out of her wits, but even Lin Tianhai, who was hiding away in the pitch-black shadows, gasped sharply in utter dread. "Bai Bei, cease. What on earth are you trying to do? You don't need to be scared. I'm not signing that agreement. If you want me to sever ties, then why don't you just deal with me right here and now?" Staring at the blade in Bai Wei's hand, and her fierce, unyielding words, Bai Niaxi froze in shock. Yet to ensure her own safety, she still swiftly snatched the knife right out of Bai Wei's grip. "At least that way, The initiative would remain firmly in her own hands. Seeing that her sister had taken the knife, Bai Wei simply closed her eyes, spread her arms wide, and adopted a posture of leaving her fate entirely in someone else's hands. However, Bai Niaxi was, after all, just a young girl. How could she ever dare to actually take a life? Waiting a few seconds, and seeing that Bai Niaxi made no move, Bai Wei suddenly flashed a chilling, desolate smile at her. If you aren't going to strike, then this relationship will never truly end. Do whatever you want. With those words, Bai Wei turned around and walked away. Staying with her younger sister for even a single second longer would only remind her of her father's utter ruthlessness. Right now, she was simply using the most pathetic, feeble way possible to provoke and infuriate this arrogant little sister of hers. Bai Niaxi gripped the knife tightly in her hand, watching Bai Wei's retreating figure, while her mind replayed that chilling smile. The older girl had flashed before leaving. She was clearly nothing more than a homeless, defeated loser. How dare she flash a smile like that at her? How dare she? An unreasoning fury surged within Bai Niaxi's heart, and clutching the knife, she rapidly gave chase to Bai Wei. In no time at all, the two of them strayed deep into a pitch-black alley, where even the streetlights couldn't pierce the suffocating darkness. Bai Wei, you stop right there. Bai Wei completely ignored her, which only fueled Bai Niaxi's blinding rage even further. She lunged forward at full speed, clutched the back of Bai Wei's jacket, and violently yanked her back around. The sudden, violent tug instantly mangled Bai Wei's drenched, soaked-through shirt, driving Bai Niaxi into an even greater frenzy. Amidst the pitch-black curtain of rain, Bai Wei stared expressionlessly at the furious younger sister standing right before her. She suddenly shot out her hand, clasping tightly onto Bai Niaxi's wrist that wielded the knife, and then forcefully pressed the razor-sharp blade flat against her own throat. Have you thought it all through now? If you've really figured it out, then go ahead and do it. The freezing raindrops falling across the back of Bai Niaxi's hand slid downward along the blade's edge. Bai Wei's ice-cold fingers clamped down hard over her hand, forcing the sharp edge downward to press ruthlessly against her own fragile jugular vein. Her eyes, which had once held a universe of emotion, now harbored nothing but a deadened, absolute stillness. A hollow gaze piercing through the rain and into the empty void, as if awaiting a final, unalterable verdict. Don't push me. I'm simply giving you a choice of your own. If you won't make a choice, then go back home. With rain this heavy, to Bai Niaxi's ears, Bai Wei's words, which sounded almost like an expression of concern, felt like the ultimate, biting mockery. What she had desperately wanted to witness was Bai Wei's utter wretchedness and total surrender. Not this eerie, soul-leading composure. Right as Bai Nia, 11 was pushed to the absolute brink of a psychological collapse by this crushing pressure. The knife in her grip nearly slipped from her trembling fingers. A dark shadow suddenly burst out from the deep eaves of the shadows. It was Lin Tianhai. He had been lurking in the darkness all along, and due to the abysmal lighting, he had only managed to catch a hazy, distorted glimpse of a cold blade, pressed tightly against the throat. Panicking, he instantly assumed that this dangerous lunatic Bai Wei was threatening the precious niece he held so dear to his heart. Without giving himself a single second to think, Lin Tianhai charged forward like a startled, feral stray dog, lunging into the fray with brutal momentum. His objective was crystal clear: snatch the knife away and yank Bai Niaxi out of harm's way. Yet he never in his wildest dreams imagined that his abrupt, violent collision would become the ultimate straw that broke the camel's back. For Bai Niaxi was already standing precariously on the absolute cliffside of a mental breakdown. Startled out of her mind by the sudden, unexpected shadow appearing from nowhere, she let out a piercing shriek, unconsciously using all her might to wrench herself free from Bai Wei's grip. As for Bai Wei, the very microsecond that dark shadow lunged forward, her body instinctively triggered a raw, defensive survival reflex. Just as Bai Niaxi violently jerked her arm away, the slick, treacherous pavement caused Bai Wei, in an effort to keep her balance, to stumble almost entirely forward toward Bai Niaxi. A catastrophic chain reaction was instantly set into motion. Trapped in a state of absolute, blind panic, Bai Niaxi thrashed and struggled with all her might, her body completely losing its balance. While instinctively pulling both her arms inward, she reached out to grab onto something, but one of her hands was still clutching the knife. Bai Wei lost her footing and pitched forward, while Lin Tianhai charged headlong into the fray with brutal force, lunging straight for the hand holding the knife, and clamping down on it with a desperate, crushing grip. In a single, fleeting fraction of a second, the combined momentum of all three people collided, causing that sharp fruit knife to carve an impossibly brief, deadly arc through the darkness. With a sickening squelch, the soft tearing sound was instantly swallowed up by the raging downpour. Time itself seemed to freeze as Lin Tianhai's hand finally managed to latch tightly onto Bai Niaxi's hand that was gripping the knife's handle. He exhaled a heavy sigh of relief, utterly convinced he had saved the day. Bai Niaxi's eyes went wide as saucers, her entire body freezing stiff. Meanwhile, Bai Wei, trapped right in the middle between the two of them, trembled ever so slightly. She felt a sudden, fleeting surge of sharp, icy pain. She lowered her head, looking momentarily bewildered, but the very next instant, that numbness of cold was instantly replaced by a scorching wave of searing heat that radiated frantically outward from her throat, a rush of warm liquid, rapidly soaked through her freezing, sodden clothes. While the sheer shock lingering in her eyes had yet to fade, a profound and absolute sense of release washed deep over her instead. She didn't utter a single sound of agony or cry out in pain. The strength inside her body drained away, like a receding tide, and she collapsed limply backward, crashing heavily down onto the freezing, waterlogged pavement as droplets of water splashed violently into the air, alongside a pool of dark crimson liquid rapidly spreading outward. Her gaze drifted toward the endless, fathomless darkness, looking right past the terrified, distorted face of Lin Tianhai, looking right past Bai Niaxi's completely bloodless, ashen face that had finally lost every last trace of light. Earlier, when I went downstairs, I didn't take the elevator. I sneaked out behind my parents' backs, so I purposely took the stairs to avoid the security cameras. After I get back, I just need to take the stairs back up to our apartment, and the elevator's logs will only record me returning home during the afternoon. A sudden lightning bolt of realization struck me. No wonder that during the investigation in the past life, nobody from the Bai household was recorded leaving the building. Bai Niaxi had acted behind her parents' backs and deliberately evaded the cameras, which inadvertently became the golden key that helped her slip past the police investigation completely. If she had no malicious plot to commit a crime, why on earth would she go out of her way to dodge the cameras? And if she truly orchestrated crime, why was the murder weapon brought along by the victim herself? These two tangled, paradoxical contradictions, combined with the various passers-by, engaging in illicit or inappropriate behavior, the conflicting testimonies of those who had already fled the scene, and the torrential downpour that completely decimated the evidence, had utterly derailed and scrambled the police's direction of inquiry. This was the absolute truth behind the infamous unsolved case. In the previous life, the two perpetrators acted out of pure negligence and reckless panic, yet both possessed watertight alibis. None of them had planned any premeditated murder, and none of them had prepared a weapon beforehand. Shielded by the ferocious storm, a case packed with countless freak coincidences had morphed into a near-perfect crime that was impossible to solve. Watching the two of them flee the scene, my heart was left with nothing but profound sorrow. Who was the real culprit, Lin Tianhai or Bai Niaxi? There was no definitive verdict, but long before they ever struck, Bai Wei had already been driven to the absolute edge of a cliff. What truly murdered her in the end was her broken, toxic family background, her callous, indifferent father, and her unstable, dearest mother. Right as I was drowning in agonizing self-blame, suddenly, a tiny, ice-cold hand gently brushed against my cheek, feeling that chilling contact graze across my skin. I turned my head in a daze, only to see the ghostly phantom of Bai Wei hovering midair, gazing down at me with an expression of boundless gentleness and heartbreaking empathy. "Follow me. Right here is far enough." She finally spoke up. That familiar voice that had shaken my heart to its core echoed vividly in my ears once again after 15 long years, though her tone carried a profound, heart-wrenching sorrow that pierced straight through the soul. "Right now? Am I dreaming right now?" Or, before I could finish my question, she raised a slender, jade-like finger and gently pressed it against my lips, completely unchanged. "Everything is already in the past. Can something like this really just be the past? You've taken upon yourself responsibilities you never should have, and shouldered a heavy guilt you were never meant to bear. Every single day I've watched you torture yourself within this obsession for 15 years. It's finally time for all of this to end. Everything you needed to investigate has already been uncovered. The exact details of the truth no longer matter. Because before that blade ever descended, my heart had already grown completely cold. My heart trembled violently as I finally understood the agonizing state of mind she was in back then. The deepest agony imaginable is when a heart grows completely cold, when the entire world has forsaken you. Whether this physical body continues to exist or not, no longer held any meaning for her whatsoever. That fatal stab to her at that exact moment was nothing less than a form of liberation. She had simply never imagined that because I couldn't manage to save her, I would turn this tragedy into a 15-year prison of obsession, drowning myself endlessly in guilt and bitter regret. Now that you can finally let go, I can finally depart in peace. This burden of sin was never yours to carry, and you shouldn't be the one to bear it. Cherish the present. She is still waiting for you to come home. Don't let your pursuit of past obsessions make you lose sight of the person right in front of you who needs to be cherished the most." Hearing those words, my entire body shook violently. That's right. I had been trapped in the shackles of past obsessions, desperately pursuing the truth, to the point of recklessly walking the very edge of the law. If I kept going down this dark path, I truly would reach a point of no return. I gazed at her dreamlike, ethereal figure standing before me, unable to tell whether this was a genuine meeting of souls, or merely a projection of my own subconscious, concocted purely out of my own desperate desire to save myself. However, whether it was real or an illusion, I knew I had to make her a solemn promise, so she could depart in absolute peace. I finally figured it all out, and this case has reached its closure. Rest easy, Bai Wei. I will no longer trap myself in the past. Upon hearing my promise, Bai Wei finally broke into a radiant, joyful smile. Truly at peace. The very next second, the freezing, stormy night surrounding us began to distort and dissolve into nothingness. When I opened my eyes, it was already the morning of the next day. The torrential downpour had stopped long ago, and a brilliant, dazzling sun hung high up in the crystal-clear sky after the rain. I had slept in a heavy, dreamless stupor all night, and the moment I woke up, I felt the suffocating gloom weighing on my heart vanish completely. The storm had passed, and the skies had cleared. Everything around me looked remarkably crisp and vivid. Looking around, I discovered that I was still lying right on the rooftop of that abandoned building from last night. Puddles of standing water soaked everything around me, yet the clothes on my body were mysteriously dry, to an astonishing degree. Whether it was dried by the fierce rooftop winds, or some inexplicable, miraculous intervention, I couldn't say. I stood up and gazed out into the distance at the sun-drenched city below. Whether it was all a dream or reality didn't matter anymore. Let be what it was. From that bizarre dream last night, I finally gained complete clarity on everything from my past life. Bai Wei's tragic departure was by no means a mere coincidence, nor was it an absolute inevitability. It was the utter devastation wrought by a toxic family, compounded by countless accidental mistakes, and layers upon layers of suffocating despair, that ultimately birthed this tragedy. As long as I am still breathing in this world, I will never allow this outcome to repeat itself. When I finally returned home, the house was dead silent as I softly stepped into the living room, instantly spotting Bai Wei wrapped snugly in a thin blanket, sound asleep on the sofa. Last night's violent thunderstorm had frightened her, So instead of retreating to her bedroom, she had curled up, right there on the living room couch. As I looked at her sleeping form, I knew she had undoubtedly been waiting for me to come home. Watching her sleep so peacefully, feeling this heavy, clinging attachment, I couldn't help but crack. A tender, gentle smile, leaning in to pull the slip blanket back over her, before turning around to head to my own room. Having trudged through the pouring rain all night outside, I rushed to take a cleansing bath, submerging myself in steaming hot water, to chase the biting chill completely out of my body. Once I was fully dressed and stepped back into the living room, Bai Wei was still fast asleep. Last night, she must have stayed up extremely late, consumed with worry for me. Seeing her sleep so deeply, I didn't have the heart to wake her up. The painful past is gone for good. Starting from today, I will live solely for this vibrant girl right before my eyes.